1,000 years before Columbus ever sailed west, when Rome was still remembered as the greatest city in the world, a boy named Arthur was growing up in England, near London. He lived in a massive grey stone castle with Sir Hector, the knight he proudly called Father. The fortress stood solid and square, with round towers at each corner and a wide courtyard at its heart. A deep moat surrounded it, and when the drawbridge was raised, the castle became an island of stone, unreachable and secure. Beyond the moat stretched a vast forest, and this was where Arthur felt most alive. He would lie beneath ancient oak trees, staring up at the open sky as sunlight filtered through the leaves. Rabbits darted across the forest floor, squirrels raced along branches, and sometimes a quiet herd of deer moved like shadows between the trunks. At times, the woods were so still that the only sounds were the tapping of a woodpecker or the soft rustle of wind through moss and violet flowers. But sometimes laughter echoed through the trees, along with the bright ringing of harness bells and the sharp jingle of spurs. Knights and ladies would ride past on the road beside the forest. Arthur would spring to his feet and watch them pass. The knights rode powerful horses, black, brown, and white, beneath richly decorated saddles set with jewels. Their armour gleamed in silver and steel, their helmets laced with fine golden chains. The ladies rode beside them in flowing silk and velvet, scarlet, purple, blue, faces bright with laughter. In those dangerous times, such cheerful processions were rare, and Arthur treasured every glimpse. When guests came to visit Sir Hector, Arthur would race back to the castle. Sir Hector greeted his visitors at the lowered drawbridge. "Welcome, my friends," Sir Hector would call, spreading his arms. "You honour my house." With a heavy hammer he struck a signal on a wooden table in the courtyard. The sharp sound echoed through the stone walls, and servants rushed from every direction to take the horses. Sir Hector's wife and daughters carefully removed the knight's armour piece by piece. Golden basins of water were brought for washing. Velvet mantles were laid across weary shoulders. Soon the hall was filled with warmth, light, and conversation. But Arthur's life was not only admiration and wonder. He trained relentlessly. Like all noble boys in England, he was being prepared for knighthood. He learned to ride before he was fully grown. He practiced with the lance and the sword until his arms ached. He hunted through woods and fields. Eventually he served as a squire, caring for armour, delivering messages and standing beside experienced knights in tournaments. One of his hardest lessons was the quintain. At full gallop, he had to strike a wooden target with his lance and escape before the spinning sandbag whipped around to knock him from the saddle. Many boys failed. Arthur rarely did. "You grow stronger each day," Sir Hector once told him, watching from the courtyard. "I will be worthy of the name knight," Arthur replied firmly. Across the countryside, people began to speak of him, of his skill, his courage, and his courtesy. Yet England itself was in turmoil. Uther of Wales, the powerful ruler, was dead. Without a king, the great lords fought for the throne. Rivalries turned to violence. Villages suffered. The land felt uncertain. Watching all this was Merlin, a magician so old his beard was white as snow, yet whose eyes were bright as a child's. Troubled by the chaos, he went to the Archbishop of Canterbury. "My lord," Merlin said quietly, "the kingdom will tear itself apart. Send word to the great lords. Let them gather in London at Christmas. A king must be chosen." The Archbishop agreed. At Christmas, the most powerful nobles in England filled the great church near the Thames. Armour clanked as they knelt beneath stone arches lit by candles. As prayers echoed through the nave, a murmur spread among a few knights near the windows. "Look there," one whispered. Outside, in the churchyard, stood a massive stone. In it was fixed an anvil of steel, and from the anvil rose a sword. Golden letters shone on its blade. Whosoever pulls this sword from this stone and anvil is the rightful king of all England. The knights rushed to inform the archbishop. No man shall touch it, he commanded, raising his hand, until our prayers are finished. When the service ended, the lords gathered around the stone. One by one, they pulled at the sword, muscles strained, faces reddened. Not one could move it. The true king is not yet revealed, the archbishop declared. God will make him known. A great tournament was announced for New Year's Day near London Bridge. After days of contests, every man would attempt to draw the sword. Arthur knew nothing of this prophecy. He rode to London with Sir Hector and Sir Kay, Sir Hector's eldest son. Snow dusted the countryside. Arthur felt alive in the cold winter air. "Stay close," Sir Hector called back to him. "I will, father," Arthur replied, though he could not hide his excitement. From distant hills they saw London rising from the horizon, walls, towers, workshops, and the wide Thames flowing beside it. After entering the city, Sir Kay suddenly frowned. "My sword?" he exclaimed. "I left it behind." He turned to Arthur. "Will you ride back and fetch it?" "Of course," Arthur said without hesitation. "I'll return swiftly." But when Arthur reached the castle, the drawbridge was raised, and no one answered his calls. He felt a flicker of frustration. "I cannot waste time," he muttered. Then he remembered the sword in the stone. "It stands there unused," he said to himself. "Kay must not be without a weapon." He rode to the churchyard, tied his horse to a young tree, and approached the stone. The place was strangely quiet. The guards had left to watch the tournament. Arthur grasped the hilt. "Just until Kay has his own," he said softly. He pulled. The sword slid free as easily as if it had never been fixed there. Arthur blinked in surprise, but thought little of it. He mounted his horse and hurried back to London Bridge. Sir Kay stared at the weapon in Arthur's hand. His face went pale. "Where did you get that sword?" he asked. "In the churchyard," Arthur answered simply. "It was set in a stone. No one seemed to claim it." Sir Kay recognized it at once. The sword no lord had been able to move. He rode swiftly to Sir Hector. "Father," Sir Kay said in a low voice, "Arthur has drawn the sword from the stone." Sir Hector turned sharply. "Arthur, is this true?" "Yes," Arthur replied. Kay needed a weapon. "I thought no harm in taking it." Sir Hector studied him carefully. "Come," he said quietly. "We must return to the churchyard." They rode back together. Sir Hector spoke firmly. "Arthur, place the sword back into the stone." Arthur did so without question. "Now," Sir Hector said, his voice steady. "Draw it out again." Arthur took the hilt and pulled. Once more, the blade came free without effort. Sir Hector fell to his knees. "My lord," he whispered, "you are the rightful king." Arthur stepped back, startled. "My lord, I am no king. I am your son." Sir Hector looked at him with deep emotion. "You are not my son by birth," he said gently. "You were given to me as a child, and I swore to raise you as my own. Merlin himself entrusted you to my care. Your father was Uther." Arthur stood silent, the winter wind stirring around them. "I never knew," he said quietly. "You were born to rule," Sir Hector replied. "And today, England has found its king." In that cold churchyard, beside a silent stone and a shining sword, the fate of a kingdom changed forever. Sir Hector looked at Arthur with a new expression, no longer as a guardian speaking to a boy, but as a loyal knight addressing his sovereign. "My lord," he said slowly, "you must be the king of this land." Arthur frowned in confusion. "What are you saying, sir? Why do you speak to me so?" Without answering at once, Sir Hector led Arthur and Sir Kay back to the stone in the churchyard. The winter air felt sharper now, heavier with meaning. "Put the sword back," Sir Hector said. Arthur slid the blade into the anvil as easily as before. Sir Hector stepped forward and gripped the hilt with both hands. He pulled hard. The sword did not move. His jaw tightened, but the steel remained fixed. "Kay," he said, stepping aside, "you try." Sir Kay strained with all his strength. His face reddened. Still, nothing. Then Sir Hector turned to Arthur. "Now you." Arthur wrapped his fingers around the hilt and gave a simple pull. The sword came free instantly, as though it had been waiting for him alone. At once, Sir Hector and Sir Kay dropped to their knees. Arthur stepped back, startled. "Father, Kay, why do you kneel before me?" Sir Hector lowered his head. "I am not your father by blood, my lord. You are of greater birth than I." Arthur's voice softened. "What do you mean?" Sir Hector took a breath. "When you were an infant, Merlin brought you to me. He said you were the son of King Uther and Queen Igwerne. The king had died, and powerful lords would have killed you to claim the throne. Merlin commanded me to raise you in secrecy. I did not question him. You were a helpless child, and I swore to protect you." Arthur stood silent, the words sinking in. "So? I am Uther's son?" he asked quietly. "That is what Merlin told me," Sir Hector replied. "And now the sword has proven it." For a moment Arthur looked not like a king, but like a young man overwhelmed by truth. "And will you still stand with me?" Sir Hector asked gently. "When you take the crown?" Arthur stepped forward and lifted them both from their knees. "You have been my father in every way that matters," he said firmly. "I owe you more than anyone alive. If I become king, you and your family will always stand beside me." Sir Hector bowed his head gratefully. "Then grant me one thing. Make Sir Kay, your foster brother, steward of your lands." Arthur nodded at once. "He shall hold that office for as long as I live." The three of them went to the Archbishop of Canterbury and told him everything, about Merlin, about the sword, about Arthur's birth. At the Archbishop's request, they kept the matter quiet until the next public trial. On 12th day, the 6th of January, the great lords gathered again. One after another, they tried to draw the sword. None succeeded. Even men of lesser rank were allowed to try. Still, the blade would not move. Finally, Arthur stepped forward. He barely touched the hilt before the sword slipped free. A murmur spread through the crowd, then anger. "He is only a boy," some lords shouted. "He cannot be of royal blood." They refused to accept it. So another test was scheduled for Candlemas in February. Again Arthur drew the sword. At Easter, the same result. Yet the most powerful lords still resisted. They demanded one final test at Pentecost in May. During these months of tension, Merlin advised the Archbishop to protect Arthur. A group of loyal knights formed around him: Sir Ulfius, Sir Brastias, Sir Bedivere, Sir Geraint, Sir Hector, and Sir Kay. They guarded him constantly, for not all men welcomed a young king. At Pentecost, the crowd gathered once more. The air was thick with anticipation. The lords watched carefully. Arthur approached the stone for the final time. With calm certainty, he pulled the sword free. This time, it wasn't the nobles who spoke first. It was the people. "We will have Arthur as our king," they cried. "No more delays. It is clear that this is God's will." The common people, farmers, craftsmen, merchants, fell to their knees. Even many of the lords could no longer deny what they had seen again and again. Arthur stepped forward and raised his hand. "There is nothing to forgive," he said, when they begged his pardon for doubting him. If I rule, I will rule for all of you." He carried the sword into the church and placed it reverently upon the altar beside the archbishop. It was a silent promise that both he and his weapon would serve justice, not pride. Soon after, the coronation took place. Knights arrived in velvet and ermine, armour gleaming with gold and jewels. Ladies wore robes of purple, scarlet, white, and blue, shimmering with pearls and rubies. The hall glowed with colour and light. Arthur, however, wore a simple white robe. He did not smile. He understood the weight of what was coming. As the archbishop placed the golden crown upon his head, Arthur bowed deeply. When he rose, he looked over the gathered crowd. "I swear," he declared, "to rule with justice, to defend the weak, and to protect this kingdom." The people uncovered their heads and pledged loyalty in return. Then, as Arthur rode slowly among them, he gave a small, steady smile. The crowd erupted. "Long live King Arthur! Long live the king!" True to his word, Arthur immediately began restoring order. Lands that had been stolen from widows and orphans were returned. Unjust claims were overturned. Corrupt officials were removed. He appointed loyal and capable men to positions of responsibility. Sir Kay as steward, Sir Ulfius as chamberlain, Sir Brastias as warden, and trusted knights like Sir Hector, Sir Bedivere, and Sir Geraint to key roles in the kingdom. From the very beginning, Arthur showed that he was not a king by accident, but a king by character. And that is how a boy raised in secrecy, in a grey stone castle near London, became the ruler England had been waiting for. Not long after Arthur took the crown, he set out across the kingdom with Merlin at his side. The land was not yet fully secure, and every journey carried risk. On one such ride, a lone knight blocked their path and issued a direct challenge. Arthur did not refuse. Steel clashed, horses circled. The fight was long and brutal. In the end, Arthur struck the final blow, but not before the stranger's blade cut deep into him. Blood soaked his armour, and when the enemy fell, the king could barely remain in the saddle. Merlin caught him before he collapsed. "You have won," Merlin said calmly, "but you will go no farther like this." He led Arthur to a hermit who lived nearby, a holy man skilled in healing. For 3 days Arthur lay weak and fevered. By the third morning the wound had closed, though the king still felt drained. As they rode away, Arthur looked down at his broken sword. "I am not yet strong," he admitted. "And now I have no blade." Merlin gave a small smile. "You shall have a sword worthy of you. Ride with trust." They travelled in silence until they reached a vast lake, still and pale as polished pearl. The surface reflected the sky so perfectly it seemed unreal. As Arthur admired it, he noticed 3 tall women standing on the shore. Beautiful, calm, almost otherworldly. "Who are they?" Arthur asked quietly. "Queens," Merlin replied. "When your darkest hour comes, they will not forget you." Arthur turned back toward the water. A thin mist began to rise from the surface. Through it, a figure moved, gliding, not walking. A woman shaped from water and light drifted toward them. Her robes flowed like waves. Foam shimmered around her shoulders, tinted in faint rainbow colours. Her arms sparkled as though covered in droplets of living crystal. Arthur lowered his voice. "Who is she?" "The Lady of the Lake," Merlin answered. "Watch closely." Out in the water, an arm rose straight from the depths, clothed in white, holding aloft a magnificent sword. The blade shone so brightly Arthur had to narrow his eyes. When the lady drew near, Arthur called to her, "Lady, that sword, would you grant it to me?" "Mine is broken," she smiled. "There is a boat tied nearby. Row out. Take the sword and its scabbard. Both are yours." Arthur stepped into the small boat and rowed toward the floating arm. As he grasped the hilt and lifted the weapon free, the arm sank silently back beneath the surface. When he turned again, the lady and the 3 queens had vanished as though they had never been there. He returned to shore, staring at the blade. Merlin asked, "Which pleases you more, the sword or the scabbard?" "The sword," Arthur answered without hesitation. Merlin's expression turned serious. "You are wrong. The scabbard is worth 10 swords. While you wear it, you will not bleed to death, no matter how grievous your wounds. Guard it carefully." Arthur examined the blade. Strange words were etched along its length. "What does it say?" he asked. "It is written in the oldest tongue," Merlin replied. Arthur read the inscription slowly. "Take me up and cast me away." He frowned. "I am glad to take it. I do not like the sound of casting it away." Merlin's gaze drifted to the lake. He knew more of the future than he spoke. "When the time comes to cast it away," he said quietly, "you will understand. Until then, use it to bring justice to this land." Arthur nodded, feeling strength return as he held the new sword. That sword would later be known across the world, but for now, it was simply the weapon that restored a king's confidence. But a crown does not end opposition. Many nobles still doubted Arthur's right to rule. So he called for a great feast in London, not merely to celebrate, but to see who stood with him. The largest hall in the city was prepared. Rich tapestries covered the walls. Long tables were laid with white linen and gold vessels. When the lords arrived in glittering armour and embroidered robes, Arthur believed he saw unity forming. He sat at the head of one table, Sir Hector at another. Arthur wore his crown, though the firelight shining in his golden hair nearly outshone it. A red robe embroidered with golden dragons flowed behind him. Course after course was brought in. Boars' heads on silver platters, roasted peacocks still gleaming with preserved colour, swans, cranes, pigs, tarts, fruits and spiced dishes. Wine flowed freely. Musicians played and sang songs praising Arthur and the legends of his bloodline. The feast lasted deep into the night. When the guests departed, Arthur sent messengers to their camps with generous gifts: horses, furs, gold. He hoped generosity would win loyalty. Instead, many lords rejected the offerings. "Take these back," they sneered. "Tell the beardless boy we do not want his gifts. We have brought him something else. Hard steel." The messengers returned and reported every word. Arthur did not respond with anger. Instead, he gathered his loyal supporters. "We cannot offer advice," one lord said bluntly. "But we can fight." Arthur nodded. "Then let us hear Merlin." Merlin entered the council chamber and spoke plainly. "Your enemies are stronger than you think. 11 kings now stand against you." A heavy silence filled the room. "You cannot defeat them alone," Merlin continued. "Across the sea are 2 powerful brothers, King Ban of Benwick and King Bors of Gaul. They face a common enemy of their own. Offer them alliance, help Arthur now, and Arthur will help them later." The plan was approved. Sir Ulfius and Sir Brastias were sent as envoys. They were received by the 2 massive warrior kings, Bors in black armour, Ban bearing green and gold on his shield. Ban, father of the future Sir Lancelot, listened carefully. "Tell Arthur," they said. "We come." Soon they arrived with 10,000 men. Arthur had 10,000 of his own. Together, they marched into Wales and waited. The 11 rebel kings assembled 60,000 warriors and advanced. Their campfires burned near a forest. Merlin advised a bold strike. Attack at midnight. Catch them unprepared. Under storm winds that masked their approach, Arthur's army circled the woods and fell upon the sleeping enemy. Tents collapsed, chaos spread, thousands fell before dawn. At sunrise, Merlin devised another strategy. A narrow road lay between a lake and dense woods. "Arthur," Merlin explained, "advance with your visible forces. Let Ban and Bors hide within the trees. When the enemy sees your smaller numbers, they will press forward. Then reinforce from the woods and trap them in the narrow pass." The plan worked. Battle erupted violently. Steel rang across water and woodland. Arthur rode like a storm through the chaos, his new sword flashing. When Ban thundered into the fight, one enemy king cried out in alarm, "We are in danger!" When Bors followed, despair spread among the rebels. Even so, the 11 kings fought bravely. By the end of the clash, their 60,000 had been reduced to 15,000. Arthur prepared to continue, but Merlin intervened. "Enough. If you push further, the tide may turn. And there is more. Saracen forces have landed in their homelands. They will be too busy defending their own lands to challenge you again for years." Arthur lowered his sword. "We fight no more," he declared. He rewarded his soldiers generously and honoured Ban and Bors with gold and gifts. The allied kings returned home victorious. And Arthur, no longer a hidden boy but a tested ruler, had secured his throne, not only with a sword from the lake, but with strategy, restraint, and the loyalty of powerful allies. After Arthur had proved himself in the war against the 11 kings, he knew one thing. A kingdom needs more than victories. It needs a centre. A place where the law feels real, where loyalty is tested, and where the best minds and bravest swords gather under one purpose. So Arthur chose Camelot, a city in Wales built high on a hill, strong in position and easy to defend. He called Merlin to him and said, "I want my headquarters here. I want a palace on the summit, something that shows what this reign stands for." Merlin nodded as if he had been expecting this all along. And then, in a way only Merlin could manage, the work happened with impossible speed. Within a week, Arthur and his closest companions were living in a new palace that looked like it had risen out of the hill itself. The heart of it was a massive great hall, built of pale marble that caught the light and made the whole space glow. Columns of green and red stone seemed to lift the roof like a forest of polished pillars. Towers rose above it, and the outside walls were lined with carved scenes that told a message even before a single word was spoken. At the bottom, wild beasts tearing down men, evil ruling the world. Above that, men hunting and defeating the beasts, human strength beginning to push back the darkness. Higher still, warriors who had become calm and honourable, strength controlled by virtue. Then figures with wings beginning to form, humanity rising beyond its old limits. And at the top, a winged statue with Arthur's face, not as a boast, but as a symbol. This was the kind of king Merlin hoped Arthur would be, the one who lifts people upward. Inside, the main entrance opened beneath a wide arch, supported by dark yellow marble. 14 tall windows poured in coloured light across the floors. Between the windows were carvings of birds, animals, and twisting vines, and patterns of mosaic stone, black, pink, yellow, and deep blue like a lake under clear sun. Along the lower walls sat rows of stone shields. Some were carved and painted with gold. Some were blank, waiting. Under each shield was a name, or space for a name that had not yet been earned. Tapestries hung above them, woven by the women of the land, showing the moments people were already calling legends. The sword drawn from the stone, the gift of the lake-born blade, the king riding out to punish injustice and protect the weak. Everywhere you looked, Camelot was being built not just as a palace, but as a story made visible. And the palace wasn't only that great hall. There was a huge dining space dressed in scarlet and gold cloth, with long oak tables set on ornate supports, and a fireplace big enough to throw warmth across the room, even on cold nights. There was a kitchen so enormous it could roast an ox whole, with hooks for kettles, stacks of plates in every metal, cupboards for fruit and salted meat, and working tables where cooks carved and prepared food without pause. The servants moved through it all with pride, because in Camelot, serving the king was not treated like humiliation. It was treated like honour. Once Arthur had settled in, he did something even more important than building walls. He built a system. He officially gathered his court and invited knights from across the realm to live and serve there. Some stayed in their own castles. Many came, bringing families, squires, and banners. Slowly, Camelot became the heartbeat of the kingdom. Arthur also put trusted people into clear roles. The Archbishop of Canterbury stood closest to him, guiding the spiritual life of the court and the people. Sir Ulfius managed the king's chambers and inner household. Sir Brastius oversaw servants and order. Sir Kay controlled supplies, food, and the running of the kitchens. Sir Hector guarded the treasury and handled the kingdom's accounts. Sir Geraint organised tournaments and training, everything that kept the knights sharp and disciplined. Around them were other officers and aides, each chosen not for flattery, but for reliability. Then came the moment that would define Camelot forever. Arthur created the Round Table. Not as decoration, not as a fancy tradition, but as a public statement. He chose 150 knights, men proven in battle, loyal in character, and committed to something higher than personal glory. And in the Great Hall, he placed a massive round table so there would be no head, no highest seat, no place where pride could claim dominance. When the knights gathered, the atmosphere changed. This wasn't a party. It was a pledge. The Archbishop blessed the seats. One by one, the knights approached Arthur. They bowed. They offered loyalty. And then they spoke vows that were meant to shape the entire kingdom, to be brave and honourable, to never be cruel, never false, never selfish, to show mercy when mercy was asked, to never fight for greed or a wicked cause. And every year, at Pentecost, they would renew those vows out loud, so no one could pretend they had forgotten what they promised. Camelot quickly became more than a military base. It became a place of culture, discipline, and beauty. Older knights, too scarred for war, offered wisdom. Young knights trained to prove themselves. Pages learned manners, patience, and humility. And the women of the court, mothers, wives, sisters, daughters, shaped the atmosphere in ways armour never could. They taught the young pages courtesy and self-control. They helped knights remove battered armour after long rides. In the evenings they filled the halls with music and conversation, harps, songs and stories, while Merlin's quiet presence moved through it all like a shadow of meaning. When knights were away, the women listened to sermons and readings, embroidered hangings for the palace, and kept the court's spirit alive. For nearly a month, Camelot felt like a festival that never ended. The city at the foot of the hill bloomed with colour. Streets were strewn with rushes and flowers. Draperies and awnings hung from buildings. Processions passed all day. Banners of crimson, white, scarlet, gold, and blue. Squires walked in fitted tunics and silk stockings. Bowmen wore green, moving like a disciplined wave through the crowd. Knights rode with plumes streaming in the wind, armour flashing in sunlight, falcons perched proudly on their wrists. Musicians played flutes and drums and harps. Storytellers gathered circles of listeners and spoke of heroes. Dagonet, the king's jester, danced through the streets with bells on his cap, making even stern warriors laugh for a moment. Whenever Arthur appeared, church bells rang and trumpets sounded. He gave gifts to the poor, cloaks, coats, and money, and held open feasts so even ordinary people could eat in safety. On bright days, tables were set outdoors on the grass, and people ate beneath trees while birds sang overhead. Food came constantly: venison, pheasants, ducks, geese, stews, tarts, so much that it felt like the whole kingdom had decided to breathe again after years of fear. And of course, there were tournaments. Not deadly battles, but controlled contests meant to sharpen skill and build reputation. Heralds sounded trumpets. Knights charged, lances lowered, dust rising in the air. Shields cracked, spears shattered. Sometimes a rider was thrown. But Arthur had ordered these fights to be friendly. No killing, no revenge, no bloodlust. Winners received prizes from the ladies, fine armour, jewelled swords, and the strongest knight crowned, the Queen of Love and Beauty. A ceremonial honour that made the entire crowd cheer. During this season, Arthur also elevated squires into knighthood. The process was solemn. A candidate proved his skill, received gifts from family, and then spent the night in prayer at the church, alone with his armour laid before the altar. At dawn, with nobles watching, he placed his sword on the altar as a sign that his strength would serve something higher than ego. Arthur touched the new knight's shoulder with Excalibur and said, "Be true and faithful." The new knight swore to protect the distressed, to uphold justice, to remain pure in purpose, and to keep faith with God. When the celebrations ended, Camelot didn't fade. It hardened into routine and mission. Round Table knights rode out to stop dhulm, robbery, oppression, cruelty, wherever they found it. The desperate came to Camelot to ask for help, and the kingdom began to speak of Arthur's court as a place where truth and justice mattered. It was after Camelot had settled into this rhythm that a neighbouring ruler, King Leodogran of Camelot, asked Arthur for military aid. Arthur agreed at once, gathered his warriors and marched to meet the threat. As they passed Leodogran's castle, the king's daughter Guinevere stood on the wall to watch the allied army move below. She did not know which rider was Arthur. Many knights wore gold and jewels, while Arthur's armour was plain. But Arthur saw her. He looked up and felt something strike him, sudden, warm, undeniable. She was slender and poised, black hair falling in two heavy braids, eyes dark and intense. And in that instant Arthur told himself, "If I win this battle for her father, I will ask for her hand." He fought with fierce focus, and he won. Back in Camelot, he spoke to his knights. "I intend to marry Guinevere." They were pleased, because they too had seen her and believed she would be a worthy queen. Arthur chose 3 trusted men, Sir Ulfius, Sir Brastias, and Sir Bedivere, and said, "Go to King Leodogran. Ask him for Guinevere." The 3 rode confidently, certain the king would be honoured. But Leodogran hesitated. Rumours still followed Arthur. He said to himself, "Arthur has helped me. He is powerful, but people whisper about his birth. Some claim he is not truly royal. I cannot give my only daughter unless I believe he is a rightful king." So Leodogran called an aged knight and asked, "Do you know the truth of Arthur's birth?" The old man answered, "2 men know, Merlin and Blaise, Merlin's master." Blaise wrote the secret down. Leodogran exhaled in frustration. "That tells me little." Then he summoned Arthur's envoys and questioned them directly. "I hear strange tales," he said. "Some say Arthur is Uther's son. Some say he is Sir Hector's. Do you truly believe he is of royal blood?" They answered without wavering, "Yes." And they explained how Sir Hector had raised Arthur in secrecy to protect him from jealous lords. Even so, Leodogran could not decide. He kept them at court for days and called for Queen Bellicent, a woman whose words carried weight. He asked her plainly, "Is Arthur truly great? Will he remain great?" Bellicent answered, "He is great, and loved. He may have fewer lords than old kings, but the loyalty he has is deep. His knights are bound by vows to mercy, truth, and honour, and he is not alone. Merlin stands with him, and the powers that gave him Excalibur are not against him. Leodogran leaned forward. But is he truly Uther's son? You are linked to that bloodline. You should know. Bellicent paused. I cannot swear it. There are two stories, Merlin's and Blaise's. Merlin claims Uther is his father, and I want to believe it. But Arthur's hair is bright as gold, while Uther and my mother were both dark. And Blaise told a stranger tale still. Leodogran asked, what tale? Bellicent described Blaise's story, a storm, a lake, a dragon-shaped ship glittering with golden figures, and a fair-haired infant carried by the waves to Merlin's feet, Merlin declaring, here is the heir. Leodogran listened in silence, troubled and intrigued, and then, that night, he fell asleep and dreamed. Mist, a phantom king, a voice denying Arthur's blood, until the mist cleared and Arthur stood crowned, shining, undeniable. Leodogran took the dream as a sign. He called the three knights and said, tell your king I will give him Guinevere. They rode back at once. Arthur's joy was immediate and unhidden. In May, Arthur sent for Guinevere, escorted by Sir Lancelot, the son of King Ban. When she arrived, the Archbishop of Canterbury married them and blessed them, reminding them that their reign, with the help of the Round Table, must bring good to the land. And so Camelot gained not only a court and an order, but a queen, while the legend of Arthur grew from victory into destiny. Not long after Camelot began to feel like the beating heart of the kingdom, Queen Bellicent faced a problem no crown could solve with power. She had many sons, and most of them had already left home to chase adventure and reputation. Two of them, Gawain and Modred, were already with King Arthur. But her youngest, Gareth, was still with her, and he burned with the same hunger. Every day he heard stories of Camelot, of knights riding out to set things right, of the Round Table, of honour earned through deeds, and every day he felt himself falling behind. Bellicent refused to let him go. You're not a man yet, she told him. You're still a boy. Stay with me a little longer. Gareth tried, but staying felt like being trapped in slow motion. One day, he approached her quietly and said, Mother, may I tell you a story? She softened. Go on. Gareth looked down for a moment, then began. Once there was a royal eagle that laid an egg high in a tree. Not an ordinary egg, this one shone like gold. It was so far above the ground you could barely see it. A poor young man saw it, and wanted it more than anything. He knew that if he could reach it, his whole life would change. Bellicent listened without speaking. Gareth continued. The boy tried to climb, but someone who loved him grabbed him and said, Don't, you'll fall, you'll die. So the boy stopped. He didn't fall, but he never stopped wanting that egg. He stayed on the ground, staring up until the longing broke him, and he died without ever becoming what he could have been. Bellicent answered carefully. If the person truly loved him, they would have climbed for him, taken the egg, and placed it in his hands. Gareth shook his head. That can't happen. Then he lifted his eyes and added, almost in a whisper, And what if it isn't a golden egg? Bellicent frowned. What do you mean? What if it's steel? Gareth said. The same steel as Arthur's sword. The kind of steel a man earns with courage. Bellicent's face went pale because now she understood exactly what he was saying. Gareth didn't stop. Mother, the gold egg is glory at Arthur's side. I'm the poor boy, and you're the one holding me back. Please, let me go. Bellicent's eyes filled with tears. Don't leave me, she said. You love me more than Gawain and Modred ever did. You're all I have left. Gareth's voice stayed gentle, but it didn't bend. "Mother, I'm wasting my strength here." "No," she pleaded. "You'll hunt. You'll chase deer and fox. You'll grow strong. Then I'll find you a beautiful wife and we'll live together until I die." Gareth shook his head again. "I don't want a wife yet. Not until I've proven I deserve one. I want to follow Arthur, my king, my uncle." Bellicent's pain sharpened into doubt, or at least into a weapon she could use. "Perhaps Arthur isn't even the true king," she said. "At least wait until he's proven he's the greatest king in the world. Stay with me." Gareth took one step closer. "No, Mother. I have to go." Bellicent wiped her tears and suddenly grew very calm, as if a plan had formed behind her eyes. "If I let you go," she said, "you must promise me something. A promise that proves you still love me." Gareth's face lit up with hope. "I'll make 100 promises if you'll only let me go." Bellicent spoke slowly, making each word land. "Then you will go in disguise. You will not arrive as a prince. You will not announce your name. You will go to Camelot as a kitchen boy. You will scrub pots, haul water, cut wood, and you will do it for a full year, and you will tell no one that you are the son of a queen." Bellicent was certain this would crush his desire. Gareth stood frozen for a long time. A year in the kitchen, while knights rode out to glory, while his brothers stood at Arthur's side. But then Gareth lifted his chin. "I can be a kitchen boy and still keep my honour," he said. "And I can watch the tournaments. I can see Arthur, Lancelot, Kay. I'll learn." "Yes, Mother. I promise." Bellicent's sadness deepened because she realised he meant it. In the days that followed, her eyes never stopped following him, and Gareth could barely bear to watch her grief. So one night, before dawn, he rose quietly, woke 2 loyal servants, and they dressed like simple farm workers, plain clothes, plain faces, no banners, no fine gear. Then they slipped away toward Camelot. It was Easter season. The grass was bright green. Birds were already chirping even though the sky was still dark. As dawn approached, mist rolled across hills and forests near Camelot, and through that mist, Gareth saw the city's towers flashing like silver. One of the servants swallowed hard. "My lord, we should go no farther," he whispered. "That looks like a fairy city." The other servant nodded urgently. "I've heard stories. Some say Arthur isn't real at all. Some say he was carried in by waves and fire. They say his victories are just Merlin's magic." The first servant looked again, trembling. "That isn't a real city. It's a vision." Gareth laughed, not in mockery, but in certainty. "Arthur is flesh and blood," he said. "He's brave, he's just, and that city is real. Come to the gate. Don't be afraid." When they reached the entrance, they stopped in stunned silence. The gate looked like it had been forged from silver and mother of pearl. In the centre was a carved figure of the Lady of the Lake, arms spread like a cross. In one hand she held a sword, in the other a censer. On either side were carved scenes of Arthur's wars, and above them were the figures of the 3 queens, the ones said to appear when Arthur's need was greatest. The 3 stared until their eyes hurt. Then music rang out, clear and distant like it came from the air itself, and the gate slowly opened. An old man with a long grey beard stepped forward, studied them, then nodded as if he had been expecting them. Without many words, he guided them through gardens and groves, past roofs and towers, up toward the palace on the hilltop. Gareth barely noticed the splendour. His heartbeat drowned it all. "I'm about to see Arthur." As he approached the great hall, he heard a voice, steady, calm, commanding. Arthur was holding an open audience, listening to his people and giving judgment. Gareth stepped inside and saw him, Arthur seated on a throne of gold, ivory, and dark wood carved with dragons. The crown on his head caught the light, but it wasn't brighter than his hair. His blue eyes were clear and calm as summer sky. On either side stood his trusted knights. One of them, tall, scarred, with dark, piercing eyes under heavy brows, could only be Sir Lancelot. Gareth recognized him instantly. A widow stepped forward, shaking with emotion. "Lord King," she cried, "your father, King Uther, took a field from my husband. My husband is dead now. Uther promised payment, but gave us nothing, and he never returned our land." Arthur leaned forward. "Tell me," he said, "what do you want most? Gold or the field?" The widow wept harder. "The field," she said. "My husband loved it. Please, give it back." Arthur nodded. "You will have the field," he said, "and I will pay you 3 times its worth to make up for the years it was taken from you." Gareth felt a rush of respect. He's not only powerful, he's fair. Before that thought even settled, another woman stepped forward. Her face was tense with grief and bitterness. "Hear me, King," she said. "I once called you my enemy. You killed my husband with your own hands. It shames me to ask you for anything, but I must. My husband's brother took my son and had him murdered. Now he has stolen my son's land. I need a knight to fight for me, to take back what was stolen, and to avenge my boy." A knight stepped forward immediately. "My king, she is my kin. Let me fight for her. Let me right this wrong." But Sir Kay cut in sharply. "Arthur," he said, "why help a woman who calls you her enemy in your own hall?" Arthur's voice didn't rise, but it carried authority. "Kay," he said, "I sit here to help anyone in my kingdom who needs justice. Her husband rebelled, and I killed him in war. That does not erase her suffering now. Let her kinsman face the man who wronged her. Bring the accused before me. If he is guilty, he will pay for it." Gareth watched, amazed. Arthur didn't rule from pride, he ruled from principle. Then a messenger from King Mark of Cornwall entered and laid a rich golden cloth at Arthur's feet. "My lord," the man said carefully, "King Mark sends this as proof he is your friend." Arthur didn't even touch it. "Take it back," he said. "When I defeat worthy kings, I return their lands and make them my subject kings, sometimes even knights of my round table. But Mark is cruel and false. I will not call him friend." The messenger stiffened with fear, but Arthur's expression softened. "This is not your fault," Arthur added. "Stay here, eat, rest, and return home safely." As more cases were heard, Gareth's eyes wandered across the hall. Beneath the tall windows were rows of stone shields with names carved below. Some shields were plain, some had carvings, some glittered with gold markings. Gareth realized what they meant. They were a scoreboard of honor, proof of deeds done, victories earned, wrongs righted. He found Sir Lancelot's shield, heavy with gold, Sir Kay's too. Then he searched for his brothers. Gawain's shield was marked with gold. Modred's was blank. Interesting, Gareth thought, and kept that thought to himself. When the last case ended, Gareth finally stepped forward. His clothes were simple and worn. He lowered his head and spoke carefully. "My lord king, I ask only this. Let me serve in your kitchens for 12 months. I will not tell you my name. After that, I will fight." Arthur studied him. "You're a fine youth," he said. "You could ask for more." Gareth didn't lift his eyes. "This is what I ask." Arthur nodded. "Then you will be placed under Sir Kay, who oversees the kitchens." Sir Kay looked Gareth over with open contempt. "This one looks like he's been starving," Kay said. "He's come here because he thinks of nothing but food." "Fine," If he wants food, he can earn it, if he works. Sir Lancelot's voice cut in, calm but sharp. Kay, he said, you understand horses and hounds, but not men. Look at him, his hands, his face, his eyes. That is not a peasant's gaze. Treat him properly, Kay scoffed. Or maybe he's a traitor. Maybe he'll poison the king. But no, he's too stupid to be dangerous. If he had any sense or noble blood, he would have asked for a horse and armour to the kitchen with him. So Gareth went. And he worked, hard. He carried water until his shoulders burned. He chopped wood. He scrubbed pots and pans until his hands cracked. Lancelot spoke kindly when passing by. Kay was strict, relentless, sometimes cruel. There were nights Gareth lay awake thinking, why did I accept this? Why did I let my mother bind me to this promise? But whenever a tournament day arrived, Gareth felt his spirit rise. He stood at the edge of the field and watched knights charge beneath sunlight, helmets shining, lances lowering, hooves shaking the ground. And he would whisper to himself, just wait, let the year pass. Then I'll ask Arthur for a chance. Someone will come begging for justice, and when they do, I'll step forward. That hope kept him steady. And it didn't take long before Camelot gave him exactly what he had been waiting for. After only a month in Camelot's kitchens, Gareth's story took a sharp turn. Back home, Queen Bellicent couldn't stand the promise she had forced on him. Her guilt finally won. She sent armour to Camelot with a letter for King Arthur, revealing the truth. The kitchen boy was her son, royal blood, and already trained like a knight. The moment Gareth received the armour, it was like the air around him changed. He went straight to Arthur, eyes bright, voice steady. My lord, he said, I can fight as well as my brother Gawain. We've tested it at home. Make me a knight, quietly. I don't want the court to know my name yet, and grant me one thing. Let me take the first mission that comes through these doors. Arthur didn't smile right away. He studied Gareth like a judge, not a friend. You know what my knights must swear? Arthur asked. Yes, Gareth replied. I'll swear it all. Arthur nodded slowly. Then I will knight you in secret, since that is what you want, but there is one exception. Sir Lancelot must know. He is my closest knight. I keep nothing hidden from him. Gareth's face softened. If Sir Lancelot knows, I'm honoured. So Arthur called Lancelot aside and told him everything. I promised Gareth the first mission we hear of, Arthur said. But he's untested in front of the court. Follow him when he leaves, quietly. Cover the lions on your shield so he won't recognize you. Lancelot agreed without hesitation, and that night, away from the eyes of the hall, Gareth became a knight. On that very same day, opportunity arrived. Like it was timed by fate, a young woman strode into Arthur's hall. She was beautiful, cheeks pink like apple blossoms, but her eyes were sharp, too sharp to be easily fooled. Arthur leaned forward. Who are you, and what do you seek? My name is Lynette, she said. I am noble-born. I need a knight, for my sister, Lady Lyoners. Arthur's tone stayed calm. Why does your sister need a knight? Lynette's voice tightened. Because she is trapped. She lives in Castle Perilous. A river circles the place 3 times, and there are 3 crossings. 3 brother knights guard those crossings, and there is a 4th brother, always in black armour, standing before the castle itself. No one sees his face. No one hears his voice. His brothers claim he is the boldest and most dangerous fighter alive. And your sister? Arthur asked. They keep her prisoner, Lynette said. They want her wealth. They want her forced into marriage. She refuses, so they demand that you send Sir Lancelot. They want to defeat him and prove they're the greatest in the land. Arthur glanced toward Gareth for the briefest moment, remembering the promise he had just made. Before Arthur could respond, Gareth stood up. "My king," he said, "give me this mission." The hall shifted. Sir Kay half rose in anger, but Gareth continued before anyone could stop him. "You know me as the kitchen boy," Gareth said boldly. "But your food and drink have made me strong enough to throw down 100 men like these." Arthur looked at him for a long moment, then gave a single decision. "Go," he said. The room erupted in disbelief. Lynette's face flushed with anger. "Shame," she snapped. "I asked for your best knight, and you give me a kitchen boy." Before anyone could calm her, she spun around, ran out, mounted her horse, and rode straight through the city gate. Gareth followed. Outside the hall, Arthur had already arranged what Gareth would need. A strong warhorse waited. Gareth's 2 loyal servants, who had travelled with him in disguise, stood nearby holding his armour. Gareth strapped it on fast, grabbed his lance and shield, swung into the saddle and rode out with a grin that looked like freedom. Sir Kay, watching from the edge of the courtyard, scoffed. "This is nonsense," Kay said. "I'm going after him. I'll drag him back to the pots." Lancelot stepped in immediately. "Don't." Arthur gave him this order. Kay ignored him, spurred his horse, and chased Gareth anyway. Up the road, Gareth caught Lynette and spoke politely. "Lady, I've been sent to fix your wrong. Lead the way, and I will follow." She didn't even look at him properly. "Go back," she said coldly. "I can smell kitchen grease when you ride near me. Your master is coming for you." Gareth glanced behind and saw Kay closing fast. When Kay came within shouting distance, he barked, "Turn around! Back to the kitchen." Gareth's voice stayed calm. "I will not." Kay lowered his lance and charged. Gareth met him cleanly, one sharp clash, and Kay went down hard, thrown from his horse into the road. Gareth didn't gloat. He simply turned back to Lynette. "Lead on," he said. "I follow." Lynette rode on in silence for a long time, Gareth a few paces behind. Finally she slowed and looked back with irritation. "You threw down your own master," she said, "and I still don't like you. You still smell like the kitchen." Gareth answered gently, "Call me whatever you want. I won't leave until your sister is free." Lynette snorted. "You talk like a noble knight. But you aren't one." She galloped ahead again, and not long after, as they passed a thick wood, a man burst from the trees, panicked and shouting, "Help! They're killing my lord! They're drowning him!" Gareth reacted instantly. "Stay close," he called to Lynette, and he drove into the woods. Inside, 6 men were forcing a 7th into water, trying to drown him. Gareth hit them like a storm, striking, scattering, chasing. Within moments they fled into the trees. The rescued man coughed and staggered upright, then clasped Gareth's forearm. "You came in time," he said. "I'm the lord of the castle nearby. Those men are my enemies. Stay the night, please. Let me thank you properly." Gareth agreed. Lynette agreed too, though her pride made it difficult. At the castle hall, the lord tried to seat Gareth beside Lynette. Lynette snapped, "He's a kitchen boy. I won't sit beside him." The lord stared at her, confused, then simply seated Gareth elsewhere and sat beside him himself. After the meal, he leaned in and said, "Kitchen boy or not, you fight like a knight. You saved my life." Next morning they rode out again. Lynette finally spoke. "Listen," she said, almost like she was trying to be kind. "You're going to die soon if you continue. We're approaching someone who will crush you. Turn back." Gareth didn't answer. He kept riding. Soon they reached the first ring of the river that circled Castle Perilous. A bridge crossed it. On the far side stood a pavilion dressed in gold and crimson silk. A knight walked nearby without armour, relaxed, too relaxed. He called out, "Is that the champion you brought from Arthur's court?" Lynette shouted back with a cruel smile, "Arthur hates you so much he sent a kitchen boy. Watch out, he might strike before you even put your armour on. He's a knave." The knight vanished into the pavilion and emerged fully armoured. He pointed his sword at Gareth. "Boy," he said, "go back to your king. You're not fit to face me." Gareth lowered his lance. "I am of nobler blood than you," he said, and charged. The fight was quick and decisive. Gareth broke him, forced him down, and then gave him one order. "Ride to Camelot. Tell Arthur his kitchen boy defeated you." The knight left in humiliation. Gareth rode on. Lynette stopped again, pretending she wasn't impressed. "You smell less like grease than you did," she said, and then rode off laughing, as if she hadn't spent the whole day insulting him. At the second circle of the river, she tried again. "That was the weakest, brother," she said. "The next one is stronger. You should go home." A knight emerged, armour shining like sunlight. Lynette called out, "Here's the kitchen boy who crushed your brother." The knight roared and charged. This battle lasted longer. Steel rang, horses bucked, but Gareth held firm, stronger than the man expected. At last, he threw him down and sent him back to Camelot with the same message. Lynette, still stubborn, tried to explain it away. "His horse slipped," she said sharply. "That's the only reason you won. Now look, there's the third brother. Are you ready to die?" At the third and innermost crossing, the final brother waited, bigger, harder, and wearing hardened skins instead of armour. Gareth struck again and again, but his blade wouldn't bite. His arms started to burn. For the first time, doubt crept in. Then Lynette, who had been poisoned with her words all day, shouted something that hit Gareth like fire. "Well done," she cried. "You're no kitchen boy. You're a brave lord. Strike for me. Don't you lose. You're worthy of the Round Table." That single sentence changed everything. Gareth gathered himself, drove forward with a final surge of strength, and hurled the third brother off the bridge into the water. He turned to Lynette, breathing hard. "Lead," he said simply. Lynette rode back beside him, no longer ahead, no longer ashamed to be seen near him. "No," she said quietly. "We ride together. I was wrong. I'm sorry." By dusk, they reached Castle Perilous, and just as they approached the moat, another rider caught up to them in the fading light. It was Sir Lancelot. He had been delayed, partly because he had stopped to help Sir Kay after Gareth threw him off his horse, but when Lancelot arrived, he saw Gareth carrying shields taken from the 3 defeated brothers and assumed Gareth was an enemy. Without warning, Lancelot attacked. Gareth fought well, very well, but Lancelot's strength was overwhelming. He knocked Gareth down. Lynette cried out in horror, and Gareth gasped, "I'm thrown!" Lancelot froze. He recognized the voice. He leaned down and lifted Gareth up. "I am Lancelot," he said, regret in his tone. "And I'm sorry, my friend." Gareth managed a breathless smile. To be beaten by Lancelot is no shame at all. Together they entered the castle, Gareth, Lynette, and Lancelot. There, at last, stood the mysterious 4th knight, fully covered in black armour. Lancelot moved as if to fight, but Gareth held up his hand. "This is my mission," he said. "Let me finish it." Gareth rode at the Black Knight, expecting the fiercest battle of all. Instead, he unhorsed him easily. The Black Knight scrambled back and raised both hands. "Spare me," he cried. "I'm not a real knight." He removed his helmet. It was a boy's face. "My brothers forced me to pretend," he admitted. "They thought people would fear us more if they believed there were 4 powerful knights." For a moment there was silence, Then Gareth laughed, Lancelot laughed, and even Lynette laughed, the tension finally breaking. Inside the castle, Lynette's sister, Lyoners, came forward, free at last. She greeted them with relief and joy, and she laid out a feast in their honour. This time, Lynette did not refuse Gareth's place beside her. She sat with him proudly. No insults, no cruelty, only respect. And soon after, Gareth's victory became more than a rescue. It became a new beginning. A marriage was celebrated, and Gareth returned to Camelot not as a kitchen boy, not as a hidden prince, but as a proven knight, one who had earned his place by deeds, not by name. Among Arthur's Round Table knights, there was one who felt painfully human, brave and warm-hearted, but also careless in the one way that can ruin a good man. He didn't always take promises seriously. His name was Sir Yvain. When he was smiling, you'd swear he was the kindest knight alive. But when excitement pulled at him, he could become reckless, forgetful, even childish, like a man who thinks the world will always forgive him. One early spring night, Camelot was glowing with comfort and music. The dining hall was still warm from supper. The last plates, pomegranates, dates, sweet fruits, had just been cleared away. Firelight climbed the bronze pillars by the hearth, and a few little pages in blue and white velvet sat close to the flames, staring into it as if they could already see their future battles written in the sparks. The king and Guinevere had stepped away for a moment, but everyone expected them back soon. The room was relaxed, full of laughter and stories, until Yvonne, leaning forward with that "watch this" look, began talking about a name that always made the air feel colder. "The Black Knight," he said. "I was barely more than a boy," Yvain admitted, half grinning. "I had just earned my spurs. Someone told me there was a wicked Black Knight living deep in a distant forest, ruining travellers, hurting villagers. I was young, proud, and convinced I could fix the world with one sword swing. So I rode out alone." He described the place: a marble platform in the middle of the woods, and in the centre a sunken fountain like a trap disguised as beauty. He said there were instructions carved into the stone, and beside the fountain sat a cup. "I filled it with water," Yvain said, "and poured it into the fountain. And the moment I did, the sky went insane. Wind howled. Rain hit like stones, and out of that storm the Black Knight came riding, like the storm had been waiting inside him. They fought, but Yvain wasn't ready. The Black Knight threw him down with ease and rode away, leaving him there like something already buried. Yvain survived, barely, and limped back to his mother's castle with a lesson he didn't yet understand. As he finished the story, the hall shifted, because King Arthur and Queen Guinevere had quietly returned, unnoticed by almost everyone. Yvain, always polite, stood immediately. The other knights followed, but Sir Kay, who never missed a chance to sting someone, smirked at Yvain. "We all know you have manners," Kay said. "But sometimes I think you have more courtesy than courage." Yvain's smile tightened. "I was a boy when he beat me. But I could defeat him now," Kay shrugged. Easy words after a full stomach. A knight always feels brave after venison. Arthur finally spoke, calm but interested. "What are you discussing?" Yvain repeated his story and then stepped forward like a man asking for permission, and also begging for redemption. "My king," he said, "grant me leave to ride tomorrow and end this Black Knight. He's poison in the land." Arthur's face turned serious. "I've heard of him," he said. "I've wanted to deal with him for a long time, but we've had fires closer to home. Now, it's time. Tomorrow, a group of us will ride. We'll put an end to him and the trouble around him." Arthur named a handful of knights, 6 or so, to go with him. Yvain was included, and that should have satisfied him. But it didn't. Yvain wanted the whole victory for himself. So in the dead middle of the night, while Camelot slept, he slipped out alone. No companions, no warning, no orders followed. He told himself it was bravery. In truth, it was pride wearing bravery's armour. He rode through darkness, humming softly, almost cheerful, until dawn led him into a valley. There, he saw something strange, a giant serpent wrapped in combat with a lion. At first, the fight seemed even. Then the serpent coiled tighter and tighter, crushing the lion's ribs, squeezing life out of it. The lion thrashed, weakening. Yvain didn't hesitate. He drew his sword and struck the serpent down. The lion sprang free, huge, golden, breathing hard. For a moment, Yvain thought it would turn on him. Instead, it walked up and pressed itself against him like a loyal hound. It lowered its head, almost bowing. Yvain laughed under his breath. "All right then," he whispered. "You and I, we ride together." From that point on, the lion followed him everywhere. At night, Yvain slept with his head resting against its neck like they were bound by something deeper than words. Days later, they reached a square castle in a meadow. People on the walls panicked when they saw the lion and fired arrows down. Yvain raised his voice. "Stop! He's tame!" The archers paused. Then the guards called back. "No one passes our castle without fighting, our lord." Yvain nodded. "Then open the gate." They agreed, but demanded the lion stay outside. Yvain refused. "He stays with me, but I'll command him to lie still." The gates opened. In the courtyard, armed men gathered, watching. Their lord stepped forward, bigger than Yvain, heavy and confident. The lion's tail lashed once, irritated. "Stay," Yvain told it, and the lion obeyed instantly. The fight began. The castle lord hit hard. His blows had weight like falling stone, but Yvain moved like quicksilver. He slipped, turned, dodged, countered. He couldn't overpower the man, so he outsmarted him. In time, the bigger knight fell, and the moment he fell, the lord shouted, furious, "Kill him!" 20 armed men rushed in. That's when the lion exploded into motion. It leapt among them, roaring, paws snapping down like hammers. Men fell back screaming. Some dropped weapons. Some crawled. In seconds, the courtyard was chaos. Yvain raised his sword and pointed at the fallen lord. "You will ride to Camelot," he said, "and give yourself to Arthur. He will judge your treachery." Then Yvain left the castle, and now he loved the lion more than ever, because the beast had saved his life without hesitation. At last, after long travel, Yvain reached the forest of the Black Knight. He found the marble platform again, the fountain, the cup. He poured the water. The storm returned like an old curse, and through the rain and roaring wind, the Black Knight arrived. He recognized Yvain's armor at once. "So," the Black Knight growled, "I didn't finish you the first time. You won't leave this time." Yvain lifted his sword. "Then the best man wins." They fought like thunder. Steel clashed so loud it drowned the fountain. They didn't even notice the storm anymore. Only each other. Yvain's strikes were harder now, more precise, and the Black Knight began to weaken. Finally, wounded badly, the Black Knight turned and fled toward his castle. Yvain commanded the lion to stay behind and chased him. Closer. Closer. 5 feet. They hit the bridge, hooves pounding. The Black Knight slipped under the raised iron gate, and it dropped instantly, but Yvain was already beneath it. The gate slammed down, cutting his horse in two. The plume from Yvain's helmet was sliced clean off and fell outside the gate like a warning. Yvain hit the ground hard but rose immediately, sword ready. The Black Knight was dead, slumped over his horse's neck. And suddenly Yvain understood what his pride had brought him. He was alone inside enemy walls. The iron gate was down, The people would find the body, they would search, and they would hang whoever did it. Breathing hard, wounded, he sprinted into the castle, climbed stairs toward a turret. His armor clattered despite his efforts, and every sound felt like a bell calling death. He was almost at the top when a door opened. A young maid looked down, small, startled, but quick-minded. Gawain whispered urgently, "Don't cry out, please. I'm Sir Ivain of Camelot. I killed the Black Knight. Hide me." The maid's eyes widened, and then her expression changed. "I will," she said. "Because you're brave, and you're bleeding. And because you killed a tyrant." Then she added something that stunned him. "This castle wasn't even his," she said. "It belongs to my lady, his cousin. He held her prisoner because she refused to marry him." Before Gawain could ask more, noise erupted below. They looked out and saw the courtyard filling with men. The body had been found, and there, standing near it, was the lady of the castle. Gawain saw her and forgot the pain for one breath. Dark hair, star-bright eyes, beauty that hit him like a spear. Only Guinevere had ever looked so royal to him. The maid grabbed his arm. "Now, hide!" They've found the front half of a horse inside the gate. They know the killer is here. She shoved his armor into a hidden hollow in the wall and pushed him toward the bed. "Between the mattresses," she whispered. "Quick!" Gawain slid between them just as heavy footsteps climbed the turret stairs. Men burst in, searching. One saw the hidden armor. "Here's armor," another shrugged. "Old armor. Our lords. Leave it." They searched the room, chairs, chests, corners, then turned to go. But at the doorway, one man paused and stabbed his sword through the mattress. Once, twice. The second thrust cut deep into Gawain's arm. He didn't make a sound. When they left, he crawled out shaking, blood soaking through his sleeve. The maid returned with food and froze in horror. "You're bleeding out," she whispered, ripping linen from her own robe. She bound him quickly, tightly, saving his life with shaking hands. From then on, she visited him daily, bringing news. She told him the lion was outside the walls roaring, and archers couldn't kill it. Gawain knew the truth instantly. My lion. She told him something else too. With the Black Knight dead, the people were furious. But they accepted the lady as their rightful ruler again, because the truth had always been there under the fear. The maid said quietly, "If I tell my lady you're here, she might help you escape." Gawain stared at the ceiling and said something he hadn't planned. "I don't want to escape," he said. "I want to stay. I love her." The maid smiled, because she had come to respect him, and went to her lady. Soon the lady moved Gawain into a better room where she could see him often and help with his care. She never told the castle folk who had killed the Black Knight. She protected him with silence. As Gawain recovered, he found the courage to speak honestly. "My lady," he said one day, "you are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I love you. If you'll marry me, I'll stay here forever. I'll stop chasing distant battles. I only ask one thing, let my lion inside. He's been crying for me." The lady listened carefully, and something about the lion, about Gawain saving it, about the lion saving him, made her believe the knight's heart was real. "If you can be that kind to a beast," she said softly, "then perhaps you'll be kind to me." She agreed. The castle people accepted him too. They feared the lion, but Gawain promised them it was gentle, only desperate for its master. He went outside the walls and called. A roar answered. A yellow shape burst from the forest like a living flame. The lion leapt to Gawain, rubbing its head against him like a dog, nearly knocking him down with affection. The people finally relaxed. Soon Gawain and the lady were married. Peace settled in the castle like sunlight. Yvain sent word to Arthur, explaining everything. Gifts came back from Arthur and Guinevere, rich and warm, and an invitation. Come to Camelot whenever you wish. But the lady wanted Yvain close. She persuaded him to stay. Then one day, a group of Round Table knights rode into the courtyard on their way to a new mission. They stopped to visit him. The moment Yvain saw their armour and banners, the old hunger returned. Adventure, glory, the thrill of battle. He went to his wife and pleaded, "Let me ride with them." A knight must test himself. Her face tightened. "You promised you would never leave me." "I will return," he insisted. She thought for a long time, then said, "I'll let you go on one condition. You come back in a year and a day, at Whitsuntide." "I swear it," Yvain said quickly. "If you break it," she warned, "I will never see you again." Yvain believed he could never forget. So he rode away with the knights, the lion following like a shadow. From the tower, his wife and the maid watched until he disappeared. Months passed. Yvain fought, travelled, won honour, until near the end of the year he finally turned toward home. But on the way, he stopped at Camelot to greet Arthur and Guinevere. They welcomed him warmly, and by chance Camelot was holding a tournament, 3 days of cheering, dust, trumpets, and clashing lances. Arthur asked Yvain if he wanted to join. Yvain couldn't resist. For 3 days he fought brilliantly, and forgot the calendar. On the third evening, while the knights sat together in the Round Table hall, a maid entered and walked straight to Arthur. She held up a ring. "This ring," she said, "belongs to Sir Yvain. He gave it to my lady. She returns it. She vows never to see him again, because he broke his promise." Before anyone could stop her, she turned and rode away. Yvain stood like a man struck. Whitsuntide had arrived on the first day of the tournament. His time was already past. He had forgotten. He ran out of the hall, down the hill, through the streets, out the gate, into the forest, until his legs failed and he collapsed. Fever took him. Grief broke his mind. He would have died if not for the lion. The lion dragged him to a brook so he could drink. It brought him game. At first Yvain refused to eat, then he began to eat raw meat just to live. His body recovered slowly, but his mind didn't. He wandered the woods like a lost spirit, striking bushes, fighting trees, muttering like a man trapped in a nightmare. And always the lion stayed beside him, protecting him from beasts and men alike. One day, while the lion was away hunting, Yvain fell asleep. A kind hermit found him, saw his condition and carried him to a hut. He washed him, cut his hair, clothed him in a simple robe. Then the door exploded open. The lion roared, charging in. But when it saw the hermit caring for its master, it softened instantly and bowed its head at the hermit's feet. From then on, Yvain stayed near the hut. The lion brought meat. The hermit divided it into 4 parts, 3 for the lion, 1 cooked for himself and Yvain. Sometimes Yvain would still wander for days, half mad, and every time the lion found him and guided him back. Until one night Yvain drifted in one direction with stubborn purpose, toward his wife's lands. The lion tried to steer him back to the hut, but failed. He kept walking, always forward until he reached the marble platform again. The fountain place, the storm place. He lay down there and slept. And soon 2 figures approached. A lady and a maid. The lion ran toward them, but instead of attacking, it licked the lady's hand. It recognized its mistress. Then it gently pulled at her robe and led her to Yvain's sleeping body. At first she refused to look at him. Her anger was still alive, but the maid whispered, "Mistress, look." The stories from Camelot were true. He's not pretending. He's broken. He's lost his senses. The lady knelt and finally saw it. His hollow cheeks, torn clothing, the face of a man who had paid too much for one forgotten promise. She sent the maid to the castle for a special ointment, powerful enough to cure any illness if rubbed gently over the body. When the maid returned, the lady applied it carefully, softly, so she would not wake him. Hours later, Yvain opened his eyes. At first he didn't understand where he was, then memory crashed down on him like winter. He saw her, and he begged. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I was a fool." This time, she did. They were reconciled, and Yvain swore, truly swore, that he would never again treat a promise like a joke. For a time, they lived happily again, and later they returned to Camelot together, closer to Arthur, closer to the round table, wiser than before, and carrying the kind of lesson that only pain can teach. In Camelot, there was a knight almost nobody talked about with pride. His name was Balin, and for the last 6 months he hadn't lived like a hero at all. He had accidentally killed the cousin of King Arthur. The court didn't know what to believe at first, so Balin stayed under guard, half prisoner, half guest, waiting while everyone decided whether he was truly guilty or simply unfortunate. In the end, the verdict was clear. He hadn't meant to do wrong, but the damage was done. His money was gone. His armour looked tired and patched. His clothes hung on him like proof of humiliation. And every day, while other knights chased glory, Balin sat inside Arthur's hall, watching names shine on shields, gold markings, carved symbols, stories of great deeds. He wasn't jealous of their honour, he was jealous of their chance. One afternoon, as Balin stared at those shields, the doors opened and a young woman stepped inside. She wore a mantle so rich it was trimmed with fur. She carried herself like someone who had travelled far and refused to break. Then, without a word, she let the mantle fall, so everyone could see what was strapped to her body. A heavy sword. Arthur rose slightly, surprised. "Damsel, why does a maiden wear a sword?" Her face tightened as if the weapon pulled at her bones. "I wish I didn't," she said. "It's heavy. It hurts. But I'm forced to wear it until I meet the one knight who can take it from me." Around the hall, men murmured. Several knights smiled as if the task would be easy. "Surely any of us could unfasten it," one said. The damsel shook her head. "No, many have tried. I went even to the court of King Rience, Arthur's enemy, because I heard there were bold men there. Not one could remove it. Now I've come here." Arthur nodded. "Then you are welcome. My knights will try." One knight stepped forward, grabbed the sword, and pulled. Nothing. Another tried, then another. Strong hand, stubborn effort, still nothing moved. The sword might as well have been grown into her body. The damsel watched calmly. "You don't need to strain," she said. "The one who is meant to take it will do it easily." More knights tried, one after another, until finally the line ended. Balin had stayed back the entire time. Not because he didn't want to try. Because he didn't want to be laughed at. He looked too poor to be anyone's chosen hero. But as the damsel turned to leave, something in Balin snapped, like a man who has been starving and suddenly smells bread. He stepped forward. "Damsel," he said carefully, "will you let me try? I'm poorly clothed, but my heart tells me I might succeed." The damsel studied him. His armour was unimpressive, but his face was honest, eyes steady, jaw set. Still, she hesitated. "I think you'll fail," she admitted. Balin didn't flinch. Fine clothes are only the outside. A deed is still a deed, whether done by a rich knight or a poor one. Some men wear gold and have no courage. Others wear rags and carry true valour. For a moment the hall went quiet. The damsel's voice softened. That's true. Try then. Good sir. Balin reached for the hilt, and the sword came away like it had been waiting for him. The room erupted in shock, whispers, sudden stares, the sound of pride being swallowed. The damsel looked at Balin as if she'd found the answer to a riddle. "You are a good knight," she said, "the best I have met. You will do many brave deeds." Then she extended her hands. "Now, give me my sword again." Balin's fingers tightened around the hilt. "No," he said. "I'd like to keep it. I have no other weapon worth the name." The damsel's expression collapsed into sorrow. "Then I must give it to you," she said quietly, as if obeying a rule older than any king. Arthur stepped in. "He deserves it. It weighed you down and pained you." She nodded, but her eyes stayed on Balin. "Yes, but it is a misfortune for him. This sword will make him kill the best friend he has in the world." The hall froze. "It will be his destruction." Balin shook his head at once. "That's impossible. I could never kill my best friend." He lifted the sword slightly, stubborn pride returning. "And whatever fate comes, I'll meet it. I'm keeping it." The damsel left invisible grief, as if she just watched a man choose his own doom. Balin turned to Arthur and bowed. "My lord, grant me permission to leave your court." Arthur's eyes narrowed, not angry, concerned. "I don't like to lose you. Are you still bitter about the months you spent held here?" Balin answered quickly. "No, my king. You did what you had to do. A judgment shouldn't be rushed. I don't blame you." Then his voice dropped. "But I want to earn my place. I want to do something worthy of the Round Table." Arthur studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Go then, and may you return with honour." A servant brought Balin a strong horse and better armour, gifts from the king. Balin mounted with the excitement of a man finally released back into the world. He rode out singing under his breath, lifting his shield now and then just to admire it. A blue emblem shone there, so soft and clean it reminded him of the sky itself. By evening, he was tired. From the crest of a hill he spotted a dark stone castle ahead, gloomy, silent, heavy against the horizon. Balin smiled, thinking only of rest. Then the road bent, and he saw a cross planted by the path, letters in gold catching the light. He reined in and read, "Let no knight go to the castle, for great danger is there." Balin scoffed. "I'm used to danger," he said aloud. "I fear nothing." And he rode on. Not long after, an old man stepped out beside the road as if he'd been waiting there forever. Long grey beard, grey robe dusted with frost-like sparkles. He looked like winter given a voice. "Did you read what was written?" the old man asked. "Yes," Balin replied. "And I'm still going." The old man's face tightened. "Sir Balin, of all men, you should fear that castle." Balin frowned. "Why?" "Because you are too willful," the old man warned. "And before you die, you will regret what you've done." Balin didn't answer. He pressed forward. He reached the gate. To his surprise, the place wasn't hostile at first. It felt like a dream meant to seduce travellers. A crowd welcomed him. Beautiful ladies, smiling knights. They removed his armour, draped him in crimson, and led him into a hall full of music and dancing. Food was brought, rich and endless, and Balin ate with the grateful hunger of someone who'd been poor too long. He began to think. Maybe the warning was meant for someone else. Then the lady of the castle stood and spoke with sweet certainty. "Sir Knight, it is the rule here. Every lord who comes as a guest must fight." Balin's stomach sank. "That is a harsh custom." "Only once," she replied. "And we have a knight ready. He entered just before you did." Balin forced a breath. I came here to rest, he admitted. But if that is your law, then bring me my armour. A servant approached, carrying a suit of black armour. Balin stared. That isn't mine. My armour is plain steel with blue. It is our custom, they said. In this castle, a guest fights in black. It is as good as your own. Balin couldn't explain it, but a deep unease settled in him, like a bell ringing far away. Still, he put the black armour on. He walked into the courtyard, mounted his horse, and at once another knight entered, also dressed in black, face hidden. No names, no banners, no recognition. They charged. The impact was brutal, so violent both knights were thrown from their horses and lay stunned. When they rose, they fought on foot, pushing each other toward the castle walls as the crowd watched from above. Balin's new sword struck hard, cracking the other knight's armour again and again. They fought until they couldn't breathe. Then they fought again. Each blow was answered with another. Wounds opened, deep, terrible wounds. Blood darkened the ground. Logic should have made them stop. But pride kept Balin moving. The Watchers wanted a spectacle, and Balin wanted to be remembered. With the last strength in his body, Balin drove a final strike, so heavy, so absolute, that the other knight collapsed. Balin knew it was death, and he knew, in his own body, death was close for him too. He stepped back, swaying, and forced out one question the kind men only ask when the end is already coming. "Who are you?" Balin whispered. "I have never fought such a knight." The fallen man answered faintly, voice breaking like a dying flame. "I am Sir Balin." Balin blinked, not understanding. Then the words finished him. "The brother of Sir Balin." The world tilted. Balin's mouth opened, but no sound came at first, just horror. "Alas, alas," he choked out, "that I should live to see this day." He fell backward and lost consciousness. Sir Balin, dying, dragged himself across the courtyard on hands and knees. He reached Balin, tore away the helmet, and saw his brother's face. And then Balin wept like a child. When Balin woke, Balin's voice was trembling. "If we had worn our own armour, we would have known," Balin said. "And now we must die. We've killed each other." Balin didn't even cry. His remorse was too heavy for tears. "This is my fault," he said hoarsely. "The old man warned me. I was willful. First, I demanded the damsel's sword even after she told me it would make me kill the best friend I had." He looked at Balin with a broken face. "That was you. And then I rode into this castle despite the warning." He shook his head slowly. "I deserve to die. But this punishment, killing you, my brother." Ladies came down from the walls, weeping, shocked by what they had witnessed. Balin begged them with what little breath he had left. "We are two brothers," he said. "We have destroyed each other. I pray you, bury us in the same grave." They promised through tears. Balin and Balan put their arms around each other the way they must have done as boys, before fate, before pride, before cursed swords. They waited. Balin died first. Not long after, Balin followed, and the ladies buried them together beneath one stone, carved with the story of two brothers, two knights, and one tragic choice that could never be taken back. Sir Geraint was known in Arthur's circle as one of the toughest and most honourable men in the realm. And one day, during a ride through the forest with Queen Guinevere and one of her young attendants, he saw exactly why that reputation mattered. Out of the trees came 3 riders, a lady, a knight, and a dwarf. They moved like they owned the road, quiet, confident, almost arrogant. The queen narrowed her eyes and said to her maiden, "Ride up to the dwarf, ask who his master is." The maiden did as she was told. As she approached, she noticed the knight's face, proud, cold, the kind of man who expected everyone else to step aside. She leaned toward the dwarf and asked politely, "What is your master's name?" The dwarf snapped back, "I don't know." The maiden blinked. "If you don't know," she said, still calm, "then I'll ask him myself." She guided her horse closer to the knight, only for the dwarf to lash out with his whip and strike at her. Shocked and humiliated, she pulled away and rode back quickly to the queen. Guinevere's expression hardened. Sir Geraint's temper flared. He turned to the queen and said, "My lady, I will follow them. That insult will not go unanswered. Give me 3 days. If I can reach that knight, I'll make him regret what his dwarf has done." Guinevere nodded with certainty. "Go, and I believe you'll succeed, not only today, but in every trial you choose to face, and when the day comes that you fall in love with a woman you want to marry. Bring her to me. Poor or rich, it won't matter. I'll make her shine in the finest wedding clothes in the world, bright as the sun." Geraint bowed and rode out immediately, keeping enough distance that they wouldn't notice him at first. The chase dragged through thick woods and winding paths until the 3 riders disappeared over a hill. Geraint followed, and from the top he saw a small town below with one long street and 2 strong silhouettes standing like opposites. On one side was a new fortress, its stone so fresh it still looked pale and bright. On the other side sat an old grey castle, worn down by time and neglect. Geraint watched the 3 riders enter the new fortress. Down in the town, everything was loud and frantic. People rushing, hammering, shouting. Geraint tried to find a place to stay, but everywhere was packed. He stopped a servant polishing armour and asked, "What's all this chaos?" The servant barely looked up. "The Sparrowhawk," he muttered, and kept working. Geraint asked an old man carrying a sack of corn. Same answer. "The Sparrowhawk?" he asked an armourer. The man finally snapped, "Friend, anyone who works for the Sparrowhawk has no time for questions." Geraint was done being patient. "I'm tired of hearing that name. What does it even mean? I need lodging for the night, and I need armour. I have only my sword." The armourer's face softened when he realised Geraint wasn't a local fool. "Forgive me. Tomorrow there's a major tournament here, and we're all behind. I can't sell you armour. We need every piece we have. And lodging. Everything's taken. But maybe the old Earl Ineol in that ruined castle will receive you." Geraint rode straight to the grey castle. The gate was open, the courtyard cracked and empty. He dismounted and walked into the hall, where he found Earl Ineol, an older man wearing clothes that had once been noble but were now faded and worn. Geraint spoke respectfully. "Sir, I'm looking for a place to rest tonight." The Earl nodded. "I was once rich, and now I am poor. Still, what little I have, I offer you gladly." As he spoke, a voice began to sing somewhere inside the castle, soft, clear, and beautiful. Geraint stopped like the sound had grabbed his heart. "That is my daughter," the Earl said quietly. "Her name is Enid." The Earl brought him into another room where his wife sat in a faded velvet gown, and beside her stood Enid, wearing simple, worn silk, yet somehow looking like she didn't belong to poverty at all. Her beauty was calm, natural, and real. Geraint stared a moment too long and thought, "I already love this maiden." He didn't say it. Not yet. The Earl asked Enid to care for the guest, feed his horse, then go into town to buy food. Geraint offered to handle his own horse, but the Earl refused. "We are poor, sir, but you are our guest. You will do no work under my roof." So Enid went. She returned quickly with meat and sweetcakes, and because so much of the castle was ruined, she cooked the meal in the same hall where they would eat. Then she served her mother, her father, and Sir Geraint. And the more Geraint watched her, the more he admired her grace, her strength, her quiet dignity, the more certain he became. After the meal, he finally asked, "My lord, what do they mean when they keep saying, 'the Sparrowhawk'?" The Earl's face darkened with old pain. "That is the name of the young knight who rules this town." Geraint leaned forward. "Does he live in the new fortress? And does a lady and a dwarf ride with him?" "Yes," the Earl said. Geraint's jaw tightened. "Then he is the man I'm hunting. I must face him before 3 days pass. I am Geraint of Arthur's company." The Earl's eyes widened. "I know your name. We hear stories of your deeds. I've told my Enid about you more than once." Geraint nodded. "Then tell me everything." The Earl sighed. "He is my nephew. Once I ruled here. He wanted to grow stronger by marrying Enid, my only child. She refused. I refused. So he gathered men, attacked me, stole my wealth, and left me only this broken castle." Geraint stood slowly. "Tomorrow, in the tournament, I will fight him. I will defeat him, and I will return your lands." Then he paused. "But I lack proper armour." The Earl nodded. "I can offer armour, old and rusty. But there's a rule in this tournament. No man fights unless he fights for the woman he loves most. If he wins, he takes the prize and gives it to her." "What prize?" Geraint asked. "A golden sparrowhawk," the Earl said. "My nephew has won it year after year. That's why they call him the Sparrowhawk." "But tell me, do you love any woman?" Geraint didn't look away. "Yes, I love Enid, and if you permit it, I will marry her." The Earl's face lit up like a man seeing his life repaired. Enid, however, was frightened because she believed she wasn't worthy of a knight so famous. But her heart betrayed her. She loved him too, and she agreed. The next morning, the town gathered for the tournament. The field was crowded with riders, banners, and watchers. Ladies sat beneath a pavilion draped in purple velvet and gold. Knights waited on horseback. A trumpet sounded, sharp and loud, and the Sparrowhawk rode into the field like he already owned the victory. He circled the field 3 times, then rode up to his lady and said proudly, "Once again I give you the golden Sparrowhawk, because no man dares challenge me." That's when Sir Geraint entered, wearing old, rusty armour. "I will fight you," he said. The Sparrowhawk laughed openly, then charged. They clashed like thunder. Their fight was so fierce they had to break twice just to breathe. For a long time, neither man could dominate. The crowd couldn't decide who would fall first. Then Geraint glanced toward the pavilion and saw Enid sitting there in her faded gown among women dressed in riches. And something inside him hardened into strength. He charged again with everything he had. This time his blow landed clean. The Sparrowhawk was thrown to the ground. Geraint raised his voice so all could hear. "You are beaten. Now you will do 2 things. First, you will ride to Camelot with your lady and your dwarf and beg forgiveness from Queen Guinevere, because your dwarf struck her maiden. Second, you will restore every piece of wealth you stole from Earl Ineal." The Sparrowhawk, humbled, stunned, and trapped by honour, agreed. Later, he would truly regret what he'd done, and change, but for Geraint, the story wasn't finished yet. Enid prepared to leave with him for Camelot. She felt ashamed of her faded dress, thinking of the beautiful robe her mother once gave her. Velvet like mother of pearl, embroidered with gold leaves, flowers, and birds. While she was thinking of it, her mother entered, carrying that very robe. Enid cried out with joy. "The Sparrowhawk returned it," her mother said, "along with more, robes, gold, jewels. He's trying to make amends." She helped Enid dress in the gown and smiled through tears. You look like a queen, my child. Any man would be proud to bring you to Arthur." Then Earl Ineal entered with an odd message. "Sir Geraint wants you to ride in the faded dress," he told her. "The one he first saw you wearing." Enid's heart sank, but she didn't argue. She removed the beautiful robe and put the faded one back on. When Geraint arrived, he saw the disappointment in both women's faces and said gently, "Do not fear. The Queen herself promised me something. When Enid becomes my bride, Queen Guinevere will dress her in wedding robes brighter than the sun." That comforted them. So Enid said farewell to her parents, and she rode beside Geraint toward Camelot. When they arrived, Guinevere welcomed her warmly and kept her promise, clothing Enid in brilliance fit for a royal celebration. And there, with all of Camelot rejoicing, Geraint and Enid were married, and the faded dress became nothing more than the beginning of a story that ended in light. Morgan Le Fay was one of the most dangerous people in Arthur's inner circle, because she didn't look dangerous at all. She was smart, charming, and deeply trained in magic. And she hated Arthur for the simplest reason. He was everything she wasn't. Stronger, better loved, and worst of all, genuinely good. But Morgan didn't show her hatred openly. She played the loyal ally so well that even Arthur believed her. And one day, while they were talking calmly like trusted family, she made a simple request. "Let me keep Excalibur for you," she said. "The sword and its scabbard. I'll guard them so carefully that no one will ever steal them." Arthur hesitated, but she pressed the idea with such confidence that he finally agreed. And with that one decision, he handed her the keys to his survival. Not long after, during a peaceful stretch with no wars to fight, Arthur went hunting with a knight named Sir Accolon, a man who smiled politely in public but belonged to Morgan in private. After hours of riding, the two stopped beside a wide lake, its surface shining like polished glass. That's when something impossible drifted toward them. A small ship, beautiful and silent, sailing straight to the shore as if it had been summoned. Golden fabric covered it from end to end, rippling in the breeze like living sunlight. Arthur and Accolon stepped aboard and searched it. No crew, no captain, no voice, no footsteps. Just two elegant couches on the deck, as if someone had prepared the place specifically for them. They sat down to rest, and time slipped away. Darkness fell. As they stood to leave, the ship suddenly transformed. Torches along the sides flared to life, dozens, then more, until the whole deck glowed. And in that bright firelight, 12 young women appeared as if they'd been there all along. They greeted Arthur and Accolon warmly and invited them to a feast. Inside, a table waited under embroidered cloth. Gold dishes were set in perfect rows, carved with vines, leaves, and flowing angel figures. The food was rich and endless, the kind of meal that makes you forget why you were tired in the first place. Arthur ate. Accolon ate. Everything felt safe. Then the women led them to separate rooms to sleep. Arthur barely had time to notice the red silk hangings embroidered with dragons, before exhaustion dropped him into darkness. When he opened his eyes again, the luxury was gone. He was lying in blackness. Cold stone, no windows, the air heavy and wet. Somewhere nearby, men were moaning and whispering, the sound of people who had stopped believing they'd ever leave. Arthur sat up sharply. "Where am I?" A voice answered from the dark. "A prison. Same as us." Another man spoke. "There are 20 of us here. Some have been locked down here for 7 years. This place belongs to a wicked lord named Sir Damas." The prisoners explained the trap. Damas had a younger brother, Sir Ontzlake, and the two were tearing each other apart over their inheritance. Ontzlake was strong. Damas was not. Worse, he was a coward. So Damas tried to solve his problem the dirtiest way possible. He hunted knights, captured them, and demanded they fight for him. Most refused, so he threw them into the dungeon to rot. "We barely get food," one of them said, "but we'd rather die here than fight for that man." A door creaked. A torch appeared. A woman stepped into the gloom and looked straight at Arthur. "Will you fight for Sir Damas?" she asked. "If you agree, you walk out. If you refuse, you die here." Arthur didn't answer immediately. He weighed the choices, then said, "I'd rather fight than rot in a hole, but if I fight, you free every prisoner in here." The woman agreed. Arthur turned to the prisoners. "I don't know which brother is right. I don't know which is the villain, but I'll fight. Then I'll judge fairly and force a just outcome." The prisoners stared at him. "And why are you so sure you'll win?" Arthur's voice lowered, steady and absolute. "Because I am Arthur." The dungeon erupted in joy. The men whispered his name like a prayer. Arthur then said, "Send for my sword, Excalibur, and its scabbard. With them I cannot be defeated." So the messenger was sent to Morgan le Fay. And that's where the second half of the trap snapped shut. While Arthur was being marched toward combat, Sir Accolon woke up somewhere else entirely, inside Morgan's own residence. He sat up confused, and Morgan greeted him like everything was finally lining up perfectly. "My dear Accolon," she said, "today you can have the crown, if you want it." Accolon didn't pretend to be loyal. The idea thrilled him. "Yes," he said. Morgan smiled. "Then you will fight a battle and win it. I created the golden ship. I separated you and Arthur. I placed him in prison, and now I've arranged the match." Accolon hesitated. "But I'd be fighting the king." Morgan's eyes glittered. "He won't win." Then she revealed the trick that made her plan almost flawless. "Arthur sent for Excalibur," she said. "I sent him a fake sword and a fake scabbard. You will carry the real Excalibur. He will be swinging worthless steel." Accolon's fear turned into confidence. Morgan then led him to Sir Onslake's castle, where Onslake lay sick, groaning in pain, furious that Damas had challenged him when he couldn't even stand. Morgan offered Accolon as his champion, and Onslake accepted with relief. The next afternoon, crowds gathered for the duel. Half the field supported Damas, half supported Onslake, and in the centre, two armoured riders faced each other, Arthur on one side, Accolon on the other. Arthur didn't recognise him. No one did. The horses charged. The collision threw both men from the saddle. They hit the ground hard and rose immediately, swords drawn, fighting on foot like lions. But within moments, Arthur felt it. Something was wrong. His blade didn't bite the way it should. It felt dead in his grip, and every time Accolon struck, Arthur's armour split and his blood spilled. The crowd watched in disbelief. Arthur was fighting like a man refusing to die, yet he was losing ground inch by inch. Then it happened. Arthur's sword snapped and fell in two pieces. Accolon stepped in, victorious. "Yield." Arthur spat blood and said, "Never, but if you keep attacking a man without a weapon, you'll be remembered as a coward, not a victor." Accolon didn't care. He lunged. Arthur raised his shield, barely standing now, blocking what he could, until his legs finally gave out and he crashed to the ground. And at that exact moment, when it looked finished, something changed. No one saw her, but the air shifted like water moving through air. A sound like distant ripples passed over the battlefield. The Lady of the Lake was there, invisible. And suddenly, Excalibur slipped from Accolon's grip and fell near Arthur as if dropped by an unseen hand. Arthur's eyes widened. He grabbed the hilt and felt power surge back into his body like fire returning to coals. He forced himself upright, stronger now, sharper. different. And before he attacked again, he snatched up the scabbard and hurled it far across the field. Then he looked at Accolon and said, "Now get another sword and fight me fairly." Accolon hesitated, fear flickering across him for the first time, but he convinced himself Arthur was still weakened. He called for a second blade. They clashed again. This time, it didn't last long. With Excalibur in his hands, Arthur moved like the battle had just begun, fast, relentless, precise. And within minutes he struck Accolon down with a wound that no armour could argue with. Accolon collapsed. Arthur stepped over him and demanded, "Who are you?" The defeated knight's pride finally broke. He stared up at Arthur, remorse flooding his face. "My king, I betrayed you. Morgan used me, and I wanted it. I wanted your crown." He confessed everything, his name, the plot, the magic ship, the fake sword, and Morgan's plan to destroy Arthur from inside his own circle. Arthur's face didn't twist with rage. It fell into something worse. Heartbreak. "It's a terrible thing," he said quietly, "to be betrayed by someone you believed true." Then, even with Accolon dying at his feet, Arthur did something only Arthur would do. "I forgive you," he said, "and I would save you if I could." But Accolon shook his head. "You can't. I'm finished." He was carried to a nearby abbey. The crowd rushed to Arthur, cheering his victory. But Arthur didn't smile. "This win brings me no joy," he told them. "Today I didn't just fight an enemy. I lost a friend I thought was loyal." Still, he didn't ignore the reason the duel happened. Arthur called Sir Damas and Sir Ontzlake forward and settled their dispute with one hard decision. The inheritance would be divided equally, and the brothers would stop tearing their people apart. He warned them both. If he heard they were abusing knights or travellers again, he would return and punish them personally. Damas, terrified now, returned the stolen money to the imprisoned knights. The prisoners walked free, laughing like men reborn. And Arthur rode to the abbey, sat beside Accolon's bed, and stayed there until the man died. Then he rode back to Camelot alone, carrying victory in his hands and betrayal in his heart. Picture this like the opening shot of a film. Arthur's ship cutting through grey water, his knights leaning on the rails, the wind snapping banners overhead. The day feels quiet, too quiet. Arthur steps below deck to rest, closes his eyes, and the story flips into a dream sequence. In his dream, the sea turns into a battlefield in the sky. A massive dragon tears out of the western clouds, blue-headed, gold-backed, shimmering underneath like a rainbow caught on fire. When it opens its mouth, flames spill out and sweep across land and water like a burning storm front. And then, from the east, something even more brutal appears. A giant black bear, rough as coal, with wings that pound the air like windmills. The two beasts slam together, roaring so loudly the world itself seems to shake. They wrestle and rip at each other until the sea below is stained red. And in the end, the dragon wins. Arthur wakes up with that heavy feeling you get after a dream that doesn't feel like a dream. He calls for Merlin immediately and tells him every detail. Merlin listens, then answers with calm certainty. "The dragon is you," he says. "The colours are your glory. The bear is a tyrant, someone who's crushing people under his weight. You'll face him, and you'll bring him down." Not long after, the ship reaches land. The knights anchor, step onto the shore, and the first thing they see is a crowd of locals weeping like they've run out of hope. Arthur walks straight to them and asks what's happened. They tell him they're in Brittany, and their homeland has been eaten alive by a giant. At first it was livestock, oxen, then horses. Then the monster demanded something worse. Their children. The land has gone silent. And now, they say, He's taken the Duchess of Brittany and dragged her up to his mountain. Arthur's face hardens. The Duchess isn't just a stranger, she's tied to his own bloodline. This isn't a story he can hear and walk away from. "I'll go," Arthur says. "I'll fight him." The people stare like he's just volunteered to walk into a volcano. They insist no company of men dares face that creature. Arthur doesn't argue, he simply trusts the one thing he always trusts when the world turns dark. "With my sword and my scabbard," he says, "I don't fear him." They point to the mountain where the giant lives. 2 great fires burn constantly near a cave at the top. They whisper about treasure inside. Gold, beyond imagining. Arthur barely reacts to that part. He isn't here for riches. He rides to the mountain with Sir Kay and Sir Bedivere, leaves them below and climbs alone. Halfway up, he finds a woman dressed in black, sitting beside a fresh grave. Weeping so openly it sounds like the mountain itself is mourning. Arthur asks why she cries. She begs him to be quiet. The giant can hear everything, but, she says, he enjoys the sound of weeping. It pleases him. Then she delivers the worst news of all. The Duchess is already dead. The giant killed her. Arthur grips his weapon so hard his hand aches. "I'll end him before another hour passes," he says. The woman tries to frighten him back. She tells Arthur kings have bowed to this monster. The giant wears a coat decorated with the beards of 15 rulers, trophies taken as proof they accepted him as their lord. Arthur steps forward with fire in his voice. Then he'll meet one king who doesn't accept him. At the summit, the scene is nightmare level. The giant lies asleep beside the twin fires, bigger than the tallest pine, arms thick as oak trunks, an iron club beside him like a church steeple ripped from the ground. Even sleeping, the beast looks dangerous, fire and smoke curling from his mouth and nose. Old women, trembling, fan him like servants, trapped in a terror they've survived too long. Arthur walks right up to him and calls him out. "Wake up," Arthur says. "Fight. Your time has come." The giant jolts awake, looks down, and laughs. Then he hurls the club like a falling tower. Arthur dives aside. Earth explodes where it lands, leaving a crater that could swallow a horse. Arthur charges with Excalibur. Steel flashes. But the giant doesn't bother with finesse. He grabs Arthur in both arms and squeezes like he's crushing armor and bones at the same time. Arthur feels his strength draining, his chest tightening, his vision narrowing. Yet he keeps one hand near the scabbard, because as long as he has it, he refuses to die. The giant, thinking he's finished the job, drops Arthur to the ground. Arthur forces air back into his lungs, rolls, rises, and strikes again. The blade finds flesh. The giant roars, a sound so huge it reaches Kay and Bedivere far below. Then the beast grabs Arthur again and the fight turns savage and physical. The two bodies crashing, twisting, tumbling down the mountainside like a landslide made of rage. Arthur drives his dagger in whenever he can, cutting and cutting, refusing to let the giant breathe easily. They finally crash down near the base, where Kay and Bedivere rush in. Together, they pry the giant's arms away. Arthur staggers up, sees his moment, and delivers the final blow. The giant falls. Silence hits like sunlight after a storm. When word reaches the shore, the people of Brittany drop to their knees. They thank Arthur like he's brought the world back from the edge. They offer him everything, the treasure in the cave, all of it. Arthur refuses. "Give it to the poor," he tells them. "Let the people rebuild." He takes only one trophy, the giant's iron club. 50 men have to drag it down, load it onto a barge that nearly sinks under the weight. Then Arthur returns to his ship, sails away, and the shore stays full of waving arms until the ocean swallows the view. Now, the story hard cuts into a much bigger conflict, one that isn't about a single monster, but an empire. The narration zooms out and drops a historical anchor. Long before Arthur's reign, Rome once conquered Britain, built roads, walls, left ruins that still stand, but also forced the island to pay tribute. For generations, British rulers sent gold to Rome like clockwork. Arthur refuses. He's unified the lesser kings, ended internal wars, and forged one realm. In his mind, Britain is not Rome's property and never will be again. So one day, while Arthur sits in his hall during a calm season, hunting, riding, enjoying peace, 12 elderly envoys enter. Each carries an olive branch to signal, "We come in peace," but their words aren't peaceful at all. They speak for the Roman emperor. Acknowledge Rome as Lord. Pay what your fathers paid, or Rome will make war so brutal it becomes an example for the whole world. You can feel the hall tense. Younger knights reach for sword hilts. The older ones stay still, watching Arthur. Arthur doesn't explode. He doesn't threaten the envoys. He controls the room. He gives them lodging, orders they be treated safely, and calls his leaders into council. Lancelot speaks first, sharp and eager. "We've rested long enough. If we strike now, the world will remember it." Then King Angus of Scotland stands and backs Arthur openly. Rome made their people poor. Now they have a chance to break the chain. Angus offers 20,000 men at his own expense. One by one, other lords pledge troops, weapons, and support. Arthur calls the envoys back in, and this is where the tone turns from defensive to legendary. "Go back to your emperor," Arthur says. "Tell him I owe him nothing. I won this realm by my own strength. And tell him something else. I'm not sending gold to Rome. I'm coming with an army, and I will make him acknowledge me." Still, Arthur keeps his code. He gives the envoys gifts. He sends them away unharmed. Lancelot personally escorts them to the sea. The envoys cross into Italy, deliver the message, and the emperor laughs. He calls Arthur a little king of Little England. But even his own messengers warn him. Arthur isn't bluffing. His face alone said he would never yield. The emperor decides to march into France and meet him there. He burns and kills along the way, punishing anyone loyal to Arthur, trying to crush morale before the battle even begins. Arthur answers with scale. He gathers his forces, says farewell to Guinevere, who collapses in grief and then leads an invasion force so huge it feels like the sea itself is moving. 10,000 boats carry the army across to France. The next morning, Arthur's men see the Roman legions encamped in a green field. Gold glitters on tents and armour. The emperor's command tent is purple silk crowned by a golden eagle, the symbol of Rome. Lancelot and Gawain ride forward as representatives and announce Arthur has arrived. The emperor mocks them. They don't respond. They ride back. And then the battlefield ignites. Rome's emperor speaks to his soldiers. "Don't fight like men. Fight like Romans." Arthur rides the front line on a white horse, wind tossing its mane like ocean spray. His men roar for him. He raises his hand, silence spreads, and he speaks like a king who knows exactly what's at stake. "You're fighting for your rights," he tells them. "For Britain's independence. Courage can outweigh numbers. Strike well." The charge begins. Two armies collide. Dust erupts into a thick cloud, swallowing the field. To the few shepherds and women watching from a distance, it looks like chaos with no shape. Inside the dust, it's brutal. Romans and Britons press so close it's hard even to swing a sword. The fight lasts until dark. The ground is littered with dead. Arthur rides among fallen knights and weeps. Even his horse droops its head as if it understands. But the war isn't finished. The next day, battle flares again. And when the Emperor sees his side cracking, kings falling, lines collapsing, he decides to end it personally. He rides straight at Arthur. "You refuse tribute?" he shouts. "Then come out and die." Arthur meets him head-on. They fight like two final bosses in the middle of a war, blows so heavy they ring through helmets. The Emperor lands a strike that pierces Arthur's helm and cuts deep into his cheek. Blood runs down Arthur's face. Arthur gathers everything he has left, lifts Excalibur, and delivers one decisive strike, so hard it splits the Emperor's helmet and drives down to his chin. The Emperor drops from his horse without a sound. When the Romans see their ruler dead, they surge in grief and rage, but Arthur's knights close around him, forming a living shield. The Romans break, they surrender. Arthur doesn't celebrate, he counts the cost. He treats the defeated as worthy enemies, not insects. He has the bodies of the Emperor, the kings, and the senators prepared and placed in lead chests, wrapped in flags, shields set above them like final signatures. Then he speaks to the surviving Roman senators. "Take your dead back to Rome. Let it be a message. Never again demand tribute from Britain. I won't march on Rome today, but if you ever ask me for gold again, I will come, and I won't stop until Italy is mine." The senators bow. The long funeral convoy moves toward Rome under the golden eagle, and the story closes on a simple outcome with massive weight. From that day on, the kings of Britain no longer paid Rome a single coin. Arthur's hall is loud with talk and laughter when the doors suddenly feel too small. A young man forces his way inside, so broad-shouldered he nearly scrapes the doorway. The room goes quiet as everyone turns to stare. He looks almost like a giant wearing a man's body. And then they notice the strangest detail. His coat. It's expensive cloth, old gold fabric, but it hangs on him like it belonged to someone twice his size. The sleeves are too long, bunched up to his elbows. Worse than that, the coat is stained. Dark, dried blood worked into the folds. He walks straight to Arthur like he belongs there. "My lord," he says, "call me Brune. That's all I can give you. Make me a knight." Sir Kay snorts and throws out a nickname on the spot, mocking the oversized, wrinkled coat. Brune doesn't flinch. "Fine," he says. "Call me whatever you want. I won't give you my real name." Arthur studies him carefully. He doesn't refuse, but he doesn't hand out knighthood lightly either. He reminds the young man that his knights are trained, tested, and known. A king needs to understand who he's trusting with a sword and an oath. Brune lowers his voice and the room leans in. He says his father was a nobleman, huge like him, stronger than most men could imagine, but peaceful. The kind of man who stayed home, kept order on his land, and didn't chase glory. And that's why Arthur's court never heard his name. But someone else heard it. Someone greedy. 6 years earlier, Brune was still a boy. He and his father were in the forest. His father rested at the foot of a tree while Brune washed in a nearby stream. Then an enemy rode in. One man with one goal: take the land. The blade went into Brune's father's heart while he slept. Brune ran to him too late, shaking him, screaming for him to wake up. And then he did something that turned into a vow. He pulled the coat off his father's body, the same coat now hanging on his shoulders, and put it on himself. He swore he would never take it off. Never speak his father's name. Never reveal his home. Not until the killer was punished. When Brune rode back, the nightmare was waiting. Their castle had already been seized. His mother had been taken and held prisoner. Brune was still too young to fight, so he disappeared into the countryside, living with shepherds and labouring in silence until his body caught up with his rage. And he made himself a private test. Every month he tried to rip a young tree out of the ground by the roots. Month after month, he failed. Until this morning. This morning, he says, I pulled one up. So now I'm here. The knights feel it, the grief, the discipline, the restraint. Many of them push Arthur to accept him. Arthur doesn't fully commit yet, but he keeps Brune close, lets the court train him, watches what kind of man he really is. Then fate shows up early. A few days later, most of the knights ride out to an event, and Brune is left behind with only a handful of soldiers. He's in the yard practicing, learning how to move, how to strike, how to keep balance under pressure. Queen Guinevere passes through with her 12 guards. She speaks to Brune kindly, and that's when the air splits with screaming. A lion, once locked in a stone tower, has broken free. It charges straight at them. Guinevere's guards do the unthinkable. They panic and run. All 12 abandon their queen in open ground. Brune watches them go and says, flat and disgusted, so not all cowards are dead. He doesn't run. He doesn't even have his sword in hand. He stands still and lets the lion commit to the attack. The beast leaps. Brune catches it. Bare hands on the lion's head, he grips and holds, muscles standing out along his neck like cords. The lion thrashes, claws scraping, breath burning. Brune doesn't let go. Slowly, inch by inch, he forces the head back. Then comes a loud crack. The lion collapses, a heavy body hitting the ground like a fallen statue. Right as it goes still, Arthur and the knights return. They see the dead lion, the shaken queen, and Brune standing there with blood and dust on him like proof. Arthur doesn't hesitate. Kneel, he says. Brune kneels beside the lion. Arthur taps him lightly with the sword and gives him what he came for. Rise, Sir Brune. Be loyal. Be brave. Be merciful. And for the first time in years, Brune smiles like his vow might actually end. Months pass. Brune grows restless. He wants his father's killer. Lancelot, who's been watching him closely, tells him to wait. Test yourself on something smaller first, he advises. Don't sprint into the final fight unprepared. And then a messenger arrives, at the worst possible time, when Lancelot is away. A young woman steps into Arthur's hall carrying a black shield. Painted on it is a white hand gripping a sword, like a warning sign. She says she's here to bring someone into the adventure of the Black Shield. She refuses to explain what it is, only that it leads to bloodshed and constant danger. The knights stir. Kay reaches for it. The damsel stops him immediately. Don't touch it. I choose. She walks the line of knights like she's reading their souls. Then she stops in front of Brune, looks him up and down and says, almost cruelly, Knight with the ugly coat. Will you take it? Brune doesn't blink. Gladly, if my king allows. Arthur agrees, and just like that, Brune rides out beside the damsel. Her name is Eleanor, following a path he doesn't understand, toward a threat he can't see. At first, Eleanor speaks normally. Then, mile by mile, her tone changes. She grows cold. She starts mocking him, acting as if she regrets choosing him. Brune takes it quietly, but it cuts deep. He's starting to care about her, and he can't figure out why she's turning on him. Eventually they reach a walled castle. The gate stands open like a trap that wants to be stepped into. Eleanor points at it and sighs. Since you won't leave me, she says, go in. Your first trial is there. I'm not allowed to tell you what it is. Brune rides in, fast, and the courtyard is packed. 100 armed knights on horseback waiting as if they've rehearsed this moment. Brune has seconds to choose how he dies, or how he survives. He charges through them hard, forces his way to the wall, and plants his back against stone so no one can hit him from behind. Spears punch into him. He bleeds. He holds the line anyway. From a high window, a woman watches, clearly a prisoner herself. She sees he's being swarmed and calls down quietly, trying not to be heard. She tells him there's a secret exit on the left side of the wall. Black stones mark it. Strike the stones with your sword hilt, and a hidden door will open. Brune fights his way sideways, step by brutal step, pretending it's random movement so they won't catch on. He finally reaches the black stones, backs his horse into the wall, slams the hilt against it. The door opens. He explodes out through the gap just before they can close in. Behind him, 12 men lie dead. The rest scream in rage. Brune can barely stay in the saddle. He staggers to where Eleanor waits outside the walls. And here's the twist. She doesn't laugh or insult him. She runs to him, drags him to a brook, strips off his armour, cleans his wounds, and uses a salve she's been carrying. Brune tries to speak. She shuts him down. Don't talk. If you want to please me, go back to Camelot. He's too exhausted to argue. He falls asleep by the water. Back at Arthur's court, Lancelot returns and hears what happened. His face changes immediately because he knows what the Black Shield really means. He says knights have taken that path before. None came back. It's designed like a grinder. One danger after another, until the rider breaks. Lancelot arms himself and rides out at full speed. He finds Brune again, awake now, fighting 6 knights at once, enemies from the castle coming to finish the job. Lancelot crashes into the fight and ends it quickly. Then he orders the surviving attackers to free the lady they held prisoner and to surrender themselves to Arthur. Eleanor begs Lancelot to take Brune home. She doesn't want him to die. Lancelot calls her out. Brune fought like a true knight. Why is she pushing him away? Brune, bitter and wounded in a different way, finally says the truth out loud. She scorns me, and I love her. And that's when Eleanor breaks. I love you, she admits. That's why I'm cruel. I'm terrified this quest will kill you. Brune is stunned and happy, but he refuses to back down. He gave his word. He can't abandon the path now. Lancelot offers a solution. Give the quest to me. Let him go home. Brune refuses. So Lancelot does the only thing he can. He joins him. They travel under Eleanor's guidance through dangerous forests, ambushes, beasts, traps, and strange places where men try to bend reality itself. Brune keeps fighting. But it's clear without Lancelot, he would have been buried long ago. Finally, Eleanor points to the last stage. A black stone fortress on a hill, square and harsh, with a turret like a fist raised to the sky, and at the gate, 2 dragons. Eleanor tells them the castle belongs to Lord Brian of the Isles. Brune freezes. That name hits like lightning. It's the name of the man who murdered his father. Brune roars so loudly the dragons answer with their own roar. He charges uphill. The dragons are green, huge, eyes and tongues like flame, wings wide as ship sails. Brune doesn't hesitate. He and Lancelot fight like men who don't expect mercy. Teeth crunch against helmets. Fire breath hisses. Steel and strength win, but only after a brutal struggle. Both dragons fall. Then the gate opens and a porter steps out like this has all been planned. Enter, he says, and fight. They both move. The porter stops them. Only one may enter. Brune turns to Lancelot. This is mine. Lancelot agrees. The gate locks behind Brune. Inside, 2 massive knights attack at once. Brian's brothers. Brune is exhausted from the dragons, bleeding, but vengeance keeps him upright. He drops one quickly. The other yields. Brune sends them out to Lancelot. Then another rider storms into the courtyard. Sir Plenorius, Brian's cousin. He hits Brune with a spear so hard it cracks his helmet. Brune fights on, but his strength is leaking out fast. And then Plenorius stops. He tells Brune something unexpected. He respected Brune's father. He hated what Brian did, but he's bound by oath to fight for his cousin until he's defeated. Brune tries to answer and collapses into a swoon. Planorius lifts him, not like a victor, but like a man carrying someone he honours, takes him up into the turret and lays him on a bed. Outside, Lancelot hears shouting that Brune is dead. The gate won't open. So Lancelot climbs the wall and drops into the courtyard like a storm. He meets Planorius and fights him. Planorius is bigger, but Lancelot is Lancelot. Planorius realises he's losing and asks for mercy the same way he gave it to Brune. Lancelot agrees, because that's what honourable men do. And then, quiet footsteps on the turret stairs. Brune wakes just enough to hear them. Lord Brian of the Isles slips into the room like a rat with a blade, planning to kill Brune while he lies wounded, exactly the way he killed Brune's father. Brune sits up, rage overriding pain. "You coward," he spits. "You came to murder me in a bed, just like my father." Brian backs away, terrified, and bolts toward the battlements. Brune follows, staggering but determined. They clash at the edge of the height, Brian trying to shove Brune off the wall. Brune flips position, forces Brian backwards step by step until there's nothing behind him but air. Then Brune slams him with the shield. Brian slips. He falls. He hits the courtyard below and breaks like a man who lived by betrayal and died by gravity. Lancelot and Planorius see it happen. They order Brian buried. Eleanor is found and brought back, crying with relief and joy. When Brune is strong enough to travel, he searches through Brian's holdings for the last thing he cares about more than vengeance, his mother. He finds her alive, held in the very castle that once belonged to his father. Their reunion is pure release, years of fear and silence finally cracking. Brune brings his mother back to Camelot. Lancelot brings Eleanor. And after everything, blood, fire, dragons, betrayal, near death, this story ends the way the best Arthurian stories end. With a vow fulfilled, a wrong corrected, and a knight, once hidden behind an ugly coat, finally standing in the light, marrying the woman who tried to push him away only because she loved him too much to watch him die. At Arthur's court, reputation mattered more than beauty or charm. If someone proved corrupt, they were sent away. The problem was, you didn't always learn the truth right away, especially when a person knew exactly how to hide it. That was Vivian. She was striking, graceful, and so lively that people naturally trusted her. She smiled at the right moments, spoke sweetly, and never looked like danger. But under the elegance was something colder, something calculated. One of Arthur's strongest allies was King Pellinore. Long ago, he had even fought Arthur himself, but after that clash they became friends, and Pellinore earned a place among the Round Table. He wasn't the type to sit at court for long. He lived for the road, riding out, returning with scars, then disappearing again. Vivian admired him openly. She loved hearing about his battles, his victories, the way he carried himself like a man who couldn't be shaken. One afternoon, she convinced him to ride with her deep into the forest, away from the eyes of Camelot. They had barely reached a dense stretch of woodland when a golden-haired young woman stepped out onto the path, frantic and pale. "Sir Knight, help me," she cried to Pellinore. "My betrothed is here in the woods, dying. An enemy attacked from behind and drove a sword into his back. We were on our way to Arthur's court. Please, if you don't come now, he will die." Pellinore didn't hesitate. He turned his horse toward her at once, but Vivian grabbed at him. "Don't go," she warned. "It could be a trick. She might be a witch. Stay with me." Pellinore pushed her hand away, calm but firm. "She isn't a witch," he said. "She's a girl begging for help. The golden-haired woman pleaded again, voice breaking. She said she needed to reach Arthur's court to see her father, and her wounded lover had meant to ask permission for their marriage. Time was running out. Pellinore started forward, until Vivian did something cruelly clever. She jerked her reins, made her horse lurch violently, and threw herself to the ground as if she had fainted. She lay there like a fallen flower, unmoving. For a moment, Pellinore froze. He couldn't abandon a lady who looked hurt. But if he stayed, someone else would die. He spoke to the golden-haired woman like a man trying to make an impossible choice sound reasonable. "I will help you," he promised. "But first, I must take this lady back to safety. Then I will return. Wait for me." The golden-haired woman looked at him as if the hope drained out of her. "It will be too late," she whispered. Then she vanished back into the trees. Pellinore lifted Vivian onto her horse and secured her with her long green scarf so she wouldn't fall again. The moment she was tied safely, Vivian opened her eyes and began to groan, suddenly awake, suddenly ill, and now insisting he move slowly. She forced him to crawl back toward Camelot at her pace, wasting precious time. Pellinore barely spoke. His mind stayed in that forest, on that desperate voice. The second he reached the city gate, he handed Vivian off to another knight and spurred his horse hard, racing back into the woods like a man chasing a mistake. He found the narrow trail and pushed into it, branches slapping his shoulders, leaves tearing at his cloak. The path opened into a small clearing, and there he saw them. The golden-haired woman lay in the grass, beside a young knight. The ground around them was stained dark, her eyes lifted weakly. "He's dead," she said. "And I'm dying too." She told him a lion had burst from the forest and killed her lover with a single blow, and then wounded her so badly she couldn't survive. Pellinore's face crumpled. He knelt beside her, held her head gently in his lap, and spoke to her softly until her breathing stopped. Then, in silence, he placed both bodies across his horse and walked them back toward Camelot like a man carrying his own guilt. Near the great hall, Arthur and Merlin met him. Pellinore looked destroyed. "I am a miserable man," he said. Merlin's expression hardened, not with anger, but with the kind of sorrow that comes from knowing too much. "You're more miserable than you understand," Merlin said. "That girl was your daughter." Pellinore went still. Merlin explained that the child had been stolen long ago. Only recently had she discovered who her father truly was, and she had come toward Arthur's court to find him, hoping to be reunited at last. Pellinore broke. "This is my punishment," he cried. "I failed the one who needed me most." Merlin didn't soften his words. "And there is more punishment ahead," he said. "Vivian will be judged in her time, and you, one day the person you trust most, will betray you. That betrayal will lead you to your death." Pellinore lowered his head. "I deserve it," he whispered. The court buried the two lovers with deep mourning, and for a long time after that, Pellinore stopped riding out. The hunger for adventure died inside him, replaced by regret. Now the story shifts to the knight everyone believed was the strongest blade in Arthur's world, Sir Lancelot. Even the Round Table admitted it. No one matched him in battle. Arthur loved him like a brother, and the court always felt smaller when Lancelot rode away. One day, Lancelot called his nephew, Sir Lionel. "Ride with me," he said. "We're going to find trouble." Lionel was thrilled. To be chosen by Lancelot wasn't just an honour, it was a dream. They travelled through dense forest, then across a wide open plain under harsh sun. At a small cluster of trees, Lancelot dismounted to rest. The heat and the long road pulled him into sleep. Lionel stayed awake, watching. That's when he saw chaos in the distance. 3 knights being hunted down by a single massive warrior. One by one, the big knight smashed them from their saddles, tied them together by their bridles like captured animals, and dragged them along. Lionel, young and proud, felt his blood rise. He mounted quietly so he wouldn't wake Lancelot. He rode out alone. The big knight laughed when he saw him coming. One strike, that was all it took. Lionel hit the ground hard, stunned, and was bound with the others. The giant knight marched them back to his stronghold, stripped them of armour, beat them with thorny rods, and threw them into a deep dungeon already packed with prisoners. Back on the road, another figure was moving fast. Sir Hector, Arthur's old foster father. He had heard Lancelot and Lionel had left the court, and he wanted to join them. A woodcutter told him about a castle nearby and a strange challenge, a copper basin beneath a tree near a stream. Strike it 3 times, and an adventure would come to you. Hector rode there, and his heart sank when he saw the proof. Shields hung from the tree. Many of them belonged to the Round Table, including Lionel's. Hector struck the basin, and a huge knight appeared like a storm made human. "Fight me," the warrior boomed. "I am Sir Turquaine." Hector had heard the name. Everyone had. Turquaine was infamous, capturing knights, breaking them, stacking prisoners like trophies. Hector fought anyway. He even managed to wound Turquaine, something few had ever done. But courage didn't win this time. Turquaine smashed him down, carried him into the castle, and offered him a deal. "Swear loyalty to me, and you walk free." Hector spat the answer. "I serve King Arthur." So Turquaine stripped him, beat him, and threw him into the dungeon with the others. There, Hector found Lionel and many knights in misery. "Is Lancelot here?" Hector asked. Lionel shook his head and explained he'd left Lancelot asleep. Hector's eyes brightened despite his pain. "Then we're not lost," he said. "He will come." And Lancelot did wake, but not the way Hector expected. As he slept, 4 women rode past and stopped when they recognized him. One of them was Morgan Le Fay, Arthur's dangerous relative who had caused trouble before and still carried poison in her smile. "I'll take him," she said. "And when he wakes, we'll make him choose one of us." She cast a spell, and the women carried Lancelot to a castle. When he woke, he found himself trapped in luxury. Beautiful room, locked doors, no memory of how he arrived. A young servant girl brought him food and whispered the truth. He was under magic, but the spell would weaken in 12 hours. Then the 4 women came in, dressed like living symbols: sea foam silk, forest velvet, autumn satin, and Morgan in dark, storm-coloured fabric, glittering with diamonds. "Choose," Morgan demanded. "Pick one of us to marry, and you'll have comfort and power." Lancelot looked at them like they were wasting his time. "I won't marry," he said. "Arthur needs me." Their faces hardened. "Then rot here," they said. "Choose, or die in prison." That night, the servant girl returned. "The spell is broken," she whispered. "I can get you out, but you must promise something." She revealed she was King Bagdemagus' daughter. Her father had been crushed in a tournament and was humiliated. Another tournament was coming in 2 days, and he needed a champion to restore his honour. Lancelot agreed instantly. She led him through door after door, 12 heavy locks, 12 keys like iron bricks, until they reached the courtyard. He regained his horse and armour, and they rode hard through the night to Bagdemagus' court. Bagdemagus welcomed Lancelot like salvation. The court celebrated, but Lancelot couldn't relax. Lionel was missing. He could feel it like a thorn under the skin. At the tournament, Lancelot took a plain white shield so no one would recognise him. He and 3 knights waited, hidden near the field. When Bagdemagus' men started losing, Lancelot exploded out of cover and tore through the fight like a blade through cloth. no one could stop him. The tide turned instantly. He even unhorsed one of Arthur's own knights, Mordred, without killing him, because Lancelot didn't harm Round Table men. Later, he would regret that mercy, but not yet. Bagdemagus won everything that day because of the unknown White Shield Knight. He offered gifts. He begged Lancelot to stay. Lancelot refused. He rode out at dawn, back toward the place he had fallen asleep, hunting for Lionel like a man chasing a shadow. On the road he met a damsel on a white horse who told him what had happened. Sir Turquaine had imprisoned many knights of the Round Table nearby. She led Lancelot to the tree with the hanging shields. Lancelot struck the basin so hard the bottom broke clean off. Still, no knight appeared. So Lancelot went straight to the castle. Near the gate he found Turquaine, on foot, dragging a bound knight across a horse. Lancelot recognised the prisoner immediately, Sir Gaheris, brother to Gawain and Gareth. Lancelot's voice cut like steel. "Put him down. Mount. Fight." Turquaine laughed and agreed. Their clash shook the ground. Dust rose in clouds. Their armour rang like heavy bells. Both bled. Both refused to step back. Finally, Turquaine paused, breathing hard. "I've never fought a man like you," he said. "I respect you. You fight like the one knight I hate, more than anyone alive. If you are not him, I'll free every prisoner I hold, just for your sake." Lancelot stepped closer. "And who is this knight you hate?" Turquaine's eyes narrowed. "Sir Lancelot of the Lake." Lancelot's voice turned cold. "Then we continue, because I am Sir Lancelot of the Lake." The fight resumed with a different energy. No talk, no bargaining, just violence. Turquaine was brave, but Lancelot was stronger. In the end, Turquaine collapsed, mortally wounded. Lancelot stayed with him until he died, then walked into the castle like judgment. He took the keys, opened the prison doors, and led the chained knights into daylight. Lionel and Hector could barely believe it. Lancelot found their armour, their horses, and food was brought, real food after months of bread and water. And once they were free, Lancelot did what he always did. He didn't rest in the glory. He mounted his horse, looked toward the horizon and rode on, already searching for the next threat. It started like one of those bright, harmless mornings Camelot was famous for. In early May, Queen Guinevere invited 10 ladies and 10 knights to ride out with her for a spring celebration in the woods. The next day, they gathered exactly on time. Everyone dressed in green like fresh grass after rain. White feathers nodded from the knights' helmets, and the ladies wore white blossoms woven into their hair. They promised Arthur they'd be back before noon, then rode out laughing, like the world couldn't possibly turn dark. But someone had been waiting for a moment like this. Sir Malgrace, son of King Bagdemagus, had a reputation as rotten as his ambition. His father had once been saved and honoured by Lancelot, but Malgrace didn't inherit the good in him. For a long time he'd obsessed over one thing: taking the queen. He'd never dared to try before because Guinevere was almost always surrounded by armed protection. The young knights of the Round Table practically competed for the honour of riding beside her. They guarded all the court's ladies, but everyone knew the queen was their pride. No one touched her. Then Malgrace heard the news. Guinevere was out in the woods with only a small group, lightly armed, dressed for spring, not war. So he moved. He gathered 80 men-at-arms and 100 archers, and they rode fast. When they found the queen's party, the knights and ladies were resting on a small hill, flower wreaths looped around their arms and shoulders. They barely had time to stand before Malgrace's force slammed into them. Guinevere's voice cut through the chaos. "Traitor? What do you think you're doing?" Malgrace smiled like a man who'd rehearsed the moment. "I'm taking you to my castle," he said. "And you won't leave again. I will never go with you." So the 10 knights drew their swords and charged, 10 against 180. And they fought like lions. They dropped 40 men, forcing Malgrace's soldiers back again and again. But numbers don't get tired the way bravery does. Soon every one of Guinevere's knights was bleeding. When the Queen saw them collapsing under the weight of the attack, she made a choice she hated. "Stop!" she shouted. "Do not kill my knights, and I will go with you. I would rather die than watch them cut down because of me." Her knights protested. They'd rather fall on the hill than be dragged away as prisoners. But Malgrace didn't care about honour. He ordered his archers to bind the wounds of the fallen knights. Only so he could carry them along like trophies, and the whole column started toward his castle. Malgrace rode close beside the Queen, watching her like a hawk. Once, when the path tightened and branches hung low, he even rode ahead to snap them back so they wouldn't strike her face. Less kindness than control, like polishing a stolen jewel. That was the moment Guinevere leaned toward a small maiden riding near her. "If you can," the Queen whispered, "slip away. You're small enough that they might not notice. Take this ring to Sir Lancelot. Tell him to come. Tell him I'm taken." The girl waited for the right bend in the trail and vanished into the trees, silent as a shadow. Malgrace saw movement, just enough to suspect. He ordered his archers to shoot her down. Arrows flew. The child ducked through brush and trunks and somehow escaped untouched. Malgrace turned back to the Queen with a cold satisfaction. "I know what you've done," he said, "but don't hope too much. Sir Lancelot will never reach this castle." Then he posted archers along the road with one command: shoot any knight who comes near, and he added a second warning, quieter, more nervous: if it is Lancelot, don't get close. Back at Camelot, the hours passed and the Queen didn't return. Arthur's hall grew tense. No laughter, no easy conversation, just eyes turning toward the doors. Then the little maiden arrived, breathless, dust-covered, and shaking. She told them everything and placed Guinevere's ring into Lancelot's hand. Lancelot's face changed instantly. "Bring my armour," he snapped. "Now." He didn't sit. He didn't debate. He didn't ask permission. "I will have my Queen safe before nightfall," he said. "I would rather see her back in Camelot than own all the lands of France." Within minutes he was mounted on his white horse and gone, riding so hard the road seemed to blur beneath him. The maiden led him to the hill where the ambush happened. Lancelot didn't need more directions after that. He followed the trail the only way a warrior could, by blood on grass, blood on dirt, blood on broken leaves. At last he reached Malgrace's archers. They stepped into the road with bows raised. "No one passes." Lancelot didn't slow. "I am a knight of the Round Table," he said. "This land is not yours to block." Arrows hissed. They hit him, many of them. His horse screamed and collapsed, killed under him. Lancelot tried to rush the line, but the terrain betrayed him. Hedges, ditches, thick barriers that slowed a charge. The archers fell back, racing to warn Malgrace that a knight was still coming, wounded but alive. Lancelot stood there bleeding, his horse dead, his armour heavy as stone. He couldn't abandon his armour. He would need every piece when the real fight came. But walking in full gear while wounded was torture. Then, like the world itself offering a strange solution, a carter rolled past with a rough wagon. "Carter," Lancelot said, "take me to Malgrace's castle." The man stared, stunned. In that world, only criminals rode in carts, people being hauled to execution. Knights didn't climb into wagons. Lancelot didn't explain. He simply climbed in. The wagon creaked forward. Inside Malgrace's castle, Guinevere's ladies looked down from a window. One of them laughed bitterly. "Look, my queen, some poor knight on his way to be hanged." Guinevere leaned out, and her breath caught. She recognized the 3 lions on the shield. Lancelot, her face lit like sunrise. She waved to him with a hope so fierce it almost looked like anger. The cart stopped at the gate. Lancelot raised his shield and hammered it against the wood. "Come out, Malgrace," he roared. "Come out and fight, or be known as a coward forever." At first, Malgrace tried the safest thing: silence. Locked gates. No answer. But refusing a challenge was poison to a man's name. And Malgrace feared something else too. If Lancelot had reached the gate despite the archers, other Round Table knights might do the same. They could surround him, starve him out, break his castle down around him. So Malgrace did what weak men do when they're cornered. He tried to talk his way out. He approached Guinevere with a rehearsed humility. "Fair queen," he said, "remember I spared your knights. I could have killed them. I regret taking you. Go to Lancelot, ask him not to fight. I'll host him tonight. Tomorrow you will return to Camelot." Guinevere nodded carefully. "Peace is better than war," she said. "I will speak to him." She went down to the gate and begged Lancelot to enter calmly, because Malgrace claimed he was sorry. Lancelot didn't believe a word, but he couldn't deny the queen, not when she asked him directly, so he entered. Malgrace welcomed him with forced politeness. A banquet was laid. The court's people were fed. For a moment, it looked like the storm had passed. Then Malgrace stood, lifted his voice, and stabbed at the queen with words. He accused Guinevere of treason. The room froze. Lancelot rose so fast his chair scraped the floor. "If you call her traitor," he said, "you will answer to me, right now." Malgrace pretended courage he didn't have. "I will fight," he said. "When?" Lancelot demanded. "In 8 days," Malgrace replied, "near Westminster." Lancelot accepted. Guinevere and her party mounted up to leave. The courtyard emptied. The gates opened. Lancelot was last to step out of the hall. And that's when the floor betrayed him. A trap door snapped open beneath his boots, and he dropped into darkness like a stone. The door slammed shut above him. Camelot waited. Guinevere returned and told Arthur what happened. Everyone assumed Lancelot had ridden off alone, as he often did. Arthur was furious about the accusation, but confident Lancelot would punish Malgrace and clear the queen's name. But Lancelot wasn't riding anywhere. He lay bruised in a dungeon, hungry, thirsty, and furious. For nearly 2 days he endured the dark, knowing exactly what Malgrace intended: starvation, silence, a mysterious disappearance. Malgrace finally opened the trapdoor just enough to peer inside. Lancelot's voice exploded upward. "Traitor! I will still destroy you." Malgrace flinched and slammed it shut like he feared Lancelot might jump through the ceiling. That single moment of fear cost him, because the porter's daughter saw him closing the trapdoor and grew curious. That night she lowered herself down by rope, saw Lancelot in the darkness, and felt something Malgrace didn't understand: shame. Lancelot offered her money. She refused. "I'll do it for love of the queen," she said. She helped him climb out, guided him beyond the courtyard, and vanished back into her father's shadows. Lancelot, sick and barely able to stand, reached a hermit's hut and collapsed. For days he recovered in silence, forcing life back into his body. Meanwhile, Malgrace checked the dungeon again, heard no movement, and celebrated. He thought Lancelot was dead. On the 8th day, the field near Westminster filled. Round Table knights assembled. The king was there. The crowd waited. Everyone expected Lancelot to ride in. Malgrace rode around confidently, smiling like a man who knew the ending already. The trumpet sounded once. No Lancelot. Twice. Still nothing. Knights began to step forward, asking permission to fight in Lancelot's place. "He's been trapped," they said. "Or he'd be here." Arthur hesitated, choosing who would carry that honour. And then the field heard hoofbeats. A white horse surged in. Sir Lancelot. He rode straight at Malgrace. "Here I am, traitor," he said. "Now do your worst." Malgrace struck once and went down. He fell to the ground like his bones were made of glass. "Mercy!" he screamed. "I yield! Spare me! I place myself in the king's hands, and yours." Lancelot's jaw tightened. He wanted Malgrace's blood for the dungeon, for the trap, for the insult against the queen. But mercy had rules. Once a man yielded, you couldn't simply execute him without staining your own honour. So Lancelot did something cold and humiliating instead. "What coward?" he snapped. "You stop already? Stand up and fight." Malgrace refused. "I will not rise unless you accept my surrender." So Lancelot made an offer so reckless the entire field went quiet. "I will fight you handicapped," he said. "I'll remove my helmet. I'll bare my left side. I'll tie my left hand behind my back. Then fight." Malgrace's eyes lit up. He thought he'd been handed a miracle. He shouted to Arthur, making sure everyone heard. "My king, you heard it. I accept." A squire unfastened Lancelot's helmet. His head was exposed. Armour was pulled away from his left side. His left hand was bound behind him. No shield. One arm. Open target. Malgrace charged, aiming straight for the exposed side, certain this was the moment he'd be remembered forever. Lancelot waited until the last possible second. Then he stepped lightly aside, almost lazy. Malgrace's momentum carried him past, and Lancelot drove his spear through him with one clean, devastating strike, shattering the breastplate and piercing the heart. Malgrace dropped without another word. The field went silent, then erupted. Guinevere's name was cleared publicly. The accusation died with Malgrace, and Lancelot, already admired, was honoured more than ever, because everyone had seen what happened when courage finally arrived. But Camelot's story didn't slow down. Every year Arthur hosted a grand tournament. Friendly combat, but serious pride. The prize was always a diamond. Long ago, Arthur had found an old skeleton on a rocky hill, some forgotten ruler still wearing a crown set with 9 diamonds. Arthur took them, separated the jewels, and turned them into a tradition. 1 diamond per year. 8 tournaments had passed, and 8 times Lancelot had won. The 9th diamond, the largest and most brilliant, was now on display, and everyone assumed the result was already decided. Then Lancelot shocked the court. He told Arthur he would not compete. Guinevere was furious, not because she loved violence, but because she loved seeing Lancelot win. It made her proud. It made her happy. Lancelot refused. "I gave the king my word." Guinevere leaned closer, thinking faster than anyone else in the room. "Then fight in disguise," she said. "They hold back because they know it's you. If they think you're a stranger, they'll fight harder. They'll gain more honour, and you can still compete without breaking your promise openly." Lancelot listened, and agreed. He rode away, searching for a place to change his identity. His path brought him to a castle called Astolat. The gate opened to a silent old servant. Inside, the lord of the castle welcomed him with his sons, Torre and Lavaine, and a beautiful daughter named Elaine. Lancelot asked for one thing, a shield that wasn't his. "My shield is known in Camelot," he said. "I need another." The lord offered Torre's shield. Torre had been injured and couldn't fight anymore. Lavaine volunteered to ride with the mysterious knight to the tournament. The lord joked that maybe Lavaine would win the diamond and place it in Elaine's hair. Lancelot smiled, but said little. Elaine watched him closely. He was older than her, scarred from war, marked by battle. And the moment she truly saw him, her heart locked onto him. That night at supper, Lancelot spoke of Arthur, his goodness, his glory, the weight he carried. Elaine listened as if she'd never heard a man speak like that before. When she slept, she dreamed of Lancelot. In the morning, she met him in the courtyard as he and Lavaine prepared to ride. "Will you wear my token?" she asked, bold, direct. Lancelot hesitated. He had never worn a lady's favour in any tournament. Everyone knew that, but Elaine pointed out something clever. It would help him stay unrecognised. So he agreed. She handed him a red sleeve embroidered with pearls. He tied it to his helmet. "I have never done this for any maiden," he told her. Elaine watched them ride out until they vanished. Then she asked the silent servant to bring Lancelot's real shield up to her tower. She studied every scratch and dent like it was a map of his life, and she imagined the battles behind each mark. At Camelot, the tournament began under bright colour and roaring trumpets. Arthur sat beneath a canopy where the 9th diamond glittered like frozen fire. The unknown knight with the borrowed shield rode into the melee, and the field learned very quickly. This stranger fought like a legend. Men fell, shields cracked, spears splintered. People began whispering. "This must be Lancelot." Others shook their heads. "No, Lancelot never wears a lady's token." Then Lancelot's own relatives, his kinsmen, including Sir Lionel, grew jealous and angry. "If Lancelot were here, he'd crush this stranger," they muttered. And then, fueled by pride, they decided to swarm the unknown knight. They hit him together. His horse went down. A spear punched through his armour and snapped off in his side. Blood soaked the straps beneath his breastplate. Lavaine rushed in to protect him, and together they fought their way to safety. The trumpet sounded again. Arthur declared the stranger the victor. "Come, take your diamond." But the victor could barely breathe. "Don't speak to me of diamonds," Lancelot said. "Give me air. I think I've taken my death wound." He rode away, barely staying in the saddle until he fell near the forest. Lavaine removed the spearhead as Lancelot ordered, and the pain dropped him into darkness. A hermit nearby carried him into shelter. For weeks, Lancelot hovered between life and death. Arthur was disturbed. The winner vanished. No one knew where he went, so Arthur sent Sir Gawain with a mission. "Take the diamond. Find the stranger. Do not stop until you place it in his hand." When Arthur told Guinevere what happened, she went pale. "That was Lancelot," she said. "He fought in disguise." Arthur's anger softened into worry. "He should have told me," he admitted. "Truth is always best." Guinevere, trembling with guilt, agreed. If Arthur had known, he could have ordered Lancelot's kinsman to stop. The ambush would never have happened. Gawain searched, but failed. Eventually he reached Astolat, where Elaine welcomed him, desperate for news. She showed him Lancelot's shield. Gawain understood immediately, by her face, by her voice, that Elaine loved Lancelot. So he left the diamond with her. "When he returns for his shield," Gawain said, "give him this prize. He may value it more, coming from your hands." Arthur later scolded Gawain for disobeying his direct command. A kingdom falls apart when orders mean nothing. But in Astolat, Elaine couldn't wait. She begged her father to let her go find Lancelot. The lord resisted. It wasn't proper for a young maiden to chase a wounded knight. Elaine didn't care about proper. "I cannot live unless I know where he is," she said. Her father finally allowed it, under Sir Torre's protection. Near Camelot they met Lavaine, and Elaine demanded to be taken to Lancelot at once. Lavaine, shocked she knew his name, still agreed, because Lancelot needed help. Elaine nursed him with a tenderness that even the hermit admitted saved his life. When Lancelot recovered, they returned to Astolat briefly. Then Lancelot prepared to ride back to Camelot. Before he left, he offered Elaine a reward. She turned pale and said what she had been holding in like a wound. "I love you. Take me with you to Camelot." Lancelot answered gently, like a man breaking a fragile thing in his hands. "If I had meant to marry, I would have done it long ago. The court knows my heart belongs to the king and the queen. You will one day love a young knight as you deserve, and I will give you lands and wealth as your dowry." Elaine refused it all. Her father begged Lancelot to be harsh, to do something rude enough to snap her out of it. Lancelot said he couldn't, but he promised one thing: when she stood in the tower window to wave farewell, he would not look up, so he rode away, eyes forward. Elaine watched until he disappeared, and then collapsed. Day after day she faded. Finally she told her father she was going to die, and she gave him precise instructions. Dress her in her finest clothes, place a letter in her hand, lay her on a richly covered bed, and set it on a barge. Let the silent servant steer it down the river to Camelot. Her father wept, but promised. Back in Camelot, Lancelot was welcomed with feasts and celebration. Arthur and Guinevere kept him close, relieved he was alive. Then one day, looking from the palace window, they saw a dark barge drifting slowly toward the palace steps. It stopped at the door. Arthur went down first, and saw a young woman lying still, pale as moonlight. Elaine. She wore white satin. A lily rested in her left hand, a letter in her right. Arthur had 2 knights carry her into the hall. Then he read the letter aloud. Elaine wrote that she came for a final farewell, because Lancelot had left her without one. She loved him, and her love had no return, and so she died. The hall wept. Even the strongest knights bowed their heads. Lancelot, shaken, spoke quietly. "My king, I grieve for her, but I could not marry her. I did not love her." Arthur looked at him with the weight of a ruler who understands tragedy. "You are not to blame," he said. "Some sorrow comes into the world without anyone deserving it." Then Arthur gave Lancelot one duty. "Honour her. Bury her richly." And Lancelot did. Elaine was laid to rest with a funeral worthy of a queen. A tomb was raised with her figure carved upon it, lily in hand, peace on her face. At her feet they placed Lancelot's shield, and the story of how love can break a heart was written there in gold and blue. Camelot was full of brave knights and noble ladies, but there was one person everyone quietly respected more than the rest. A young woman, gentle and bright, the sister of Sir Percival. She wasn't famous for winning fights or giving speeches. Her strength was different. The world's cruelty weighed on her so heavily that she only felt peace when she was praying that people would become kinder, that evil would loosen its grip. One day, an old man, wise and soft-spoken, sat with her and explained something she had heard whispers about for years: the Holy Grail. He told her it was the cup Christ drank from at the Last Supper, a sacred object tied to the greatest story of faith. And there was an old tradition, he said, that the Grail remained on earth for a long time after Christ's death. Anyone who touched it with true need could be healed instantly. Body, spirit, everything. But as people grew colder and more selfish, the Grail vanished from the world. It wasn't destroyed, it simply withdrew, as if heaven refused to let something holy remain among the unworthy. And if someone today was pure enough, the old man added. They might still witness it. Her eyes widened. Would they see it with their own eyes, or only as a vision? He shook his head slowly. I can't say, but either would be a blessing. Because to witness it, even for a heartbeat, would mean the person's soul is clean. From that day on, the maiden prayed harder than ever. She barely ate, she barely slept. She became thinner and paler until it looked like the light could pass through her. And finally, she began to fade, quietly, like a candle burning down in silence. One morning, knowing the end was close, she called for her brother, Sir Percival, and for Sir Galahad. Percival and Galahad were widely seen as the purest knights in Arthur's world. They weren't always the strongest in sheer force. Lancelot had that title, and others like Gareth or Geraint could match storms in battle. But Galahad and Percival carried something rarer, a kind of inner cleanliness, a heart that didn't crave applause. When they came to her bedside, her voice was weak but glowing with urgency. My brother, my friend, I have seen the Grail. Their faces tightened. She told them that during the night she woke to a sound that didn't feel like ordinary music, more like a silver call drifting over distant hills. Then, a long beam of cold, pale light poured through her window, as if the moon itself had turned into a road. And slowly, across that light, the Holy Grail moved, shining red like a perfect rose. Its glow filled the room, painting the walls with a soft crimson warmth, and then it vanished. She swallowed and whispered, almost pleading, "Go after it, both of you, and go to the hall and tell the others. Tell the Round Table to take the quest. If they can see the Grail, it will mean their souls are clean, and the world is getting better." As she spoke, Percival noticed something that startled him. Galahad's expression mirrored hers, like they were looking at the same invisible truth. Then the maiden reached beside her pillow and pulled out a belt, golden, delicate, woven with care. It wasn't made of leather or cloth. It was made from her own hair, braided into something sacred. Crimson and silver thread formed the symbol of the Grail across it. She placed it into Galahad's hands. "Wear this," she said. "Bind your sword to it. You will see the Grail, too." They left quietly, because they understood she didn't have much time left. That night they returned to Camelot. Arthur was away with Guinevere, but most of the Round Table sat in the hall. Percival and Galahad told them everything, the vision, the message, the plea. And then the hall changed. The torches died at once. A deep, cracking sound rolled overhead like thunder breaking stone. The roof groaned, the air turned heavy, and then a beam of light, so bright it made daytime look weak, cut down into the centre of the room. Across that beam, the Holy Grail moved, but it wasn't fully revealed. A glowing cloud wrapped it, hiding its true shape. You could feel its presence, its holiness, yet you couldn't truly see it. Slowly it drifted away, and the light vanished. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the loudest knights were frozen like statues. Then Percival rose, voice low. "My sister saw it clearly. I saw it through a veil. That means I am not clean enough. Still, I want to be. I vow to search for it for 12 months and a day. I will live as purely as I can, and maybe I'll earn the right to see it." One after another, the vows began. Bors vowed, Galahad vowed, Lancelot vowed, Gawain vowed. Many more followed, swept up by awe and pride and longing, all mixed together. Then King Arthur entered. When he heard what had happened, his face darkened, not with anger, but with fear. "If I had been here," he said, "I wouldn't have allowed these vows. You didn't truly see it, most of you saw it hidden in cloud." Galahad stepped forward at once. "My king, I saw it clearly, red as a jewel. and I heard a voice call my name. It told me to follow. Arthur looked at him with tenderness. Galahad, you were fit. You were built for this. But the others... His eyes moved across the hall, faces full of excitement and stubborn certainty. Most of you are meant to do a different kind of work. You are men of strength, meant to stop cruelty, punish injustice, protect the weak. That is the work you were made for. This is something else, and I fear you're chasing a wandering fire. The room sank into silence. Arthur continued, voice heavy. While you ride out chasing a vision, I will need you here. People will suffer without you. And I tell you now, many of you will not come back. The next morning, the knights who had sworn the vow rode out. Camelot watched them go with a grief that felt like the start of winter. Knights and ladies wept openly. Arthur could barely speak. At the city gate, the sworn knights separated and disappeared into different roads, like pieces of a single story breaking apart. And Arthur's fear proved real. Over the next months, farmers, widows, and frightened young women came to Camelot begging for help, pleading for a knight to right wrongs, to stop violence, to defend their homes. But the Round Table's strength was scattered. Too many chairs were empty. And as weeks turned into months, Arthur's face grew more tired, more shadowed, more alone. Finally, the year and the extra day passed. Camelot waited. All day the gates were watched, and when evening came, only a few returned. Gawain, Bors, Percival, and Lancelot. That was all. When the surviving knights gathered in the hall, Arthur stood and looked at them. I don't need words, he said quietly. Your faces tell me what you endured, and those who didn't return, even dare to speak their names aloud. He turned to Percival. Tell me what happened. Percival rose slowly. His confidence was gone. His voice carried something deeper, humility earned through pain. He confessed that when he first left Camelot, he felt almost proud. He had won so many fights, broken so many spears, proven himself so often that he believed greatness would automatically lead him to the Grail. He rode out, dreaming of heroic moments. But the world didn't give him that. Days became rough forests and empty roads. There were no grand victories, only bruises from branches, hunger, cold ground for a bed, wild berries for food. Even when he wanted to help people, he couldn't find the right fights to fight. The quest turned into loneliness. Then he found a castle and decided to rest. And there he saw someone from his past, a princess he had once loved when he was only a young squire. Back then he never dared speak his feelings. Now she welcomed him warmly, and as time passed, her kindness pulled him into comfort. The people urged him to marry her, to become their lord, to live peacefully and be happy. And for a moment, Percival almost let the quest die. Then one night he woke up with the Grail in his thoughts like a flame in his chest. He remembered his vow. He realized he hadn't even tried 2 months. Shame hit him like a sword. So he left before dawn, no farewell, no explanation, and wandered in grief until he found a holy hermit and confessed everything. The hermit listened and then said words Percival would never forget. You lack humility. You were proud of your strength. You believed you deserved the vision. You thought first of your glory, not the good you could do. Percival prayed to be freed from pride. And while he prayed, Galahad entered. He looked unreal, silver armour, calm eyes, a face like someone carrying light inside him. Galahad asked him, almost gently, "Have you seen the Grail?" Percival admitted he hadn't. Then Galahad said something that stunned everyone in the hall as Percival retold it. From the moment I left Camelot, the vision has been near me. In daylight it is faint, but at night it burns blood red. I see it on mountains, on lakes, in marshes. and it gives me strength, not for glory, but for service. I have broken cruel customs, I have defeated pagan armies, and it is because that vision keeps me clean." Then Galahad told Percival he wouldn't live much longer. He said he was going toward a city above, more beautiful than anything earthly. "Come with me tonight," he said. "Before you die, you will see it." Percival followed him out into a storm. They climbed harsh ground, lightning cracking overhead. They descended into a landscape that felt like the edge of the world, black swamp stretching toward the sea, and a massive ancient bridge crossing it, built by some forgotten king. Galahad ran across the bridge toward the water, his armor shining like a distant star. And then he vanished. Percival said he knelt on the black earth and wept, not because Galahad was gone, but because he finally understood what goodness really meant. Not shining victories, not fame, just the ability to serve without ego. And then the light came. A silver beam appeared above him, and across it the Holy Grail moved, no cloud this time. It burned crimson like a ruby. Percival prayed through the night. At dawn, he found Galahad's body by the sea, peaceful, thin from sacrifice, beautiful like a saint. He buried him and then turned back toward Camelot. Percival ended his story with a vow of his own. "My king," he said, "I will not fight again. I will live in prayer. I will become a monk. Among humble people, I will do small, steady deeds of service. Real good. Not heroic noise." Arthur looked at him with affection, but didn't speak. Then Arthur turned to Gawain. "And you?" Gawain, still the same easy spirit, shrugged with a half-smile. "This wasn't for me. I got tired. A holy man told me I wasn't fit. I spent the year among fine tents, knights, and ladies. I lived well." Arthur's expression tightened, but he didn't explode. He simply turned to Bors. "Bors, you've always been faithful. Tell me." Bors explained that early in the quest he heard rumours that madness had fallen on Lancelot, his kinsman. It broke his heart and weakened his spirit, but he still continued, believing that if heaven wanted him to see the Grail, it would come in its own time. He travelled into heathen lands, people skilled in magic, blind to God. He tried to teach them faith. They hated him for refusing their gods and threw him into prison. Months passed in cold darkness. He couldn't do heroic deeds, only endure. Then one night, a stone slipped from the wall, opening a small view of the sky. 7 stars lined across it. And through that gap, the Grail glided past. Bors said the joy nearly shattered him. The next morning, a maiden secretly converted to his faith freed him, and he returned to Camelot. Finally, Arthur turned to Lancelot, the strongest warrior in the world he ruled. "My Lancelot, did you succeed?" Lancelot groaned like a man wounded in his soul. "Yes," he said, "he was the mightiest in battle. But it meant nothing here. He admitted a heavy sin lived inside him, one he couldn't erase by force. A hermit had told him only by purifying himself could he truly see the Grail. Lancelot fought against that inner darkness so fiercely that it broke him. Madness came. He wandered in waste places, fighting lesser men who once would have trembled at his name. He became a shadow of himself. At last, he reached the sea, found a boat, and set himself drifting. For 7 days he floated until he reached an ancient castle. He heard singing and climbed upward, step after step, what felt like 1,000. Then a door burst open and he believed, whether in vision or reality, he saw the Grail, veiled, guarded by angels. And then he collapsed. When he woke, he was alone, and it took him many days to find his way home. The hall sat in silence after that. Then Gawain, blunt as ever, said something dangerous. "I don't believe it. I think it was all madness. Fancy. Arthur's voice turned sharp, not angry, grave. You are not fit for such a vision, Gawain, but do not insult what others have truly seen. He looked around at the empty chairs. I warned you, you chased a wandering fire, and now look, how many did not return. Galahad was the only one who fully saw the vision. He was blessed. The rest of you, you should have stayed and protected this land. The knights were quiet, ashamed and grieving. Then Arthur gave them the lesson that would outlive them all. Whether you seek visions or live in humble service, or fight to stop injustice, your purpose must be the same. Make yourself useful to the world in the work you are truly meant to do. Arthur rose and left the hall, Lancelot following. One by one, the others walked out into the night, and the great room was left empty, shields catching moonlight like ghosts. Time moved on. The round table had lasted many years and helped countless people, but even inside Arthur's kingdom, betrayal was growing. One traitor rose in a distant region, and Arthur rode out with most of his remaining strength to crush the rebellion. In his absence, Camelot was left under the rule of his nephew, Mordred, and Mordred was poison-wearing armour. He hated Arthur, he hated Guinevere, he hated Lancelot. With Arthur away for too long, Mordred loosened the laws. He let cruelty go unpunished. Bad customs returned. Then he did the final thing a traitor dreams of. He declared open rebellion and tried to seize the crown. Arthur returned, but the price of years was on him. So many faithful knights were gone. Hector, Ulfius, Brastias, Kay, Bors, Gawain, and Lancelot was far away. Only Bedivere remained from the early days, Arthur's oldest brother-in-arms. Arthur and Bedivere gathered the loyal ones and drove the rebels back to the sea, to a place called Lyonesse. That's where the last battle waited. The night before, Bedivere heard Arthur praying alone. Later, Arthur slept, then woke and called Bedivere close. I dreamed Gawain came to me, Arthur said. He told me tomorrow I die. Bedivere tried to lift his spirit. It's only a dream. You will win. Dawn is coming. But Arthur shook his head. This battle is different. I have no heart for it. It's hard to cut down your own people, even when they're traitors. Morning came without sun. A cold, white mist covered land and sea. It sank into bones. When the fighting began, the fog was so thick no one could see who stood in front of them. Friends killed friends without knowing. Some froze, thinking the moving shapes were ghosts. Bravery and cruelty both hid inside the same mist. All afternoon the clash of metal echoed. Then the sounds faded, until the battlefield went silent. Near sunset, a wind rose from the west and tore the fog away. Arthur stood with Bedivere and looked across the shore. Only one man still stood. Everyone else was dead. The tide had risen and moved among bodies and broken helmets, rocking spears like driftwood. Arthur's face went white. There lie my people, he whispered. I am king only of the dead. Bedivere pointed toward the one standing figure. Then strike once more, my king. End it. It was Mordred. Arthur threw aside his scabbard and raised Excalibur. He rushed the traitor. Mordred struck first, his blade crashing into Arthur's helmet, already worn thin by years. The steel split, and Arthur was mortally wounded, but Arthur's strength, even as it drained, still held one last command. He swung Excalibur with everything he had left. Mordred fell dead. Arthur collapsed. Bedivere lifted him and carried him to a ruined chapel near the sea. Arthur lay beneath a broken cross, breath shallow. Then he spoke the command that would finish the legend. Excalibur was given to me by the Lady of the Lake. I have used it as a king should. Now take it and throw it into the lake. Bedivere carried the sword through the graveyard stones and the singing sea wind until he reached the water. Moonlight broke through clouds and poured onto Excalibur's jewelled hilt. The sword was too beautiful. Bedivere couldn't do it. He hid it in weeds and returned. Arthur asked, "What did you see?" Bedivere lied. "Only the water and the reeds." Arthur's eyes narrowed. "You betrayed me. If you had obeyed, you would have seen a sign. Go back. Throw it." Bedivere went again, and failed again, hiding it once more. When he returned, Arthur's anger rose like fire. "Twice you failed," Arthur said. "Yet a man can fail twice and succeed a third time. Go, now." Bedivere ran back, gripped the sword, shut his eyes against its beauty, and hurled it out over the lake. It flashed in the moonlight. Before it touched the surface, an arm clothed in pure white rose from the water, caught Excalibur, lifted it high, brandished it 3 times, and pulled it beneath the lake. Bedivere returned trembling. Arthur knew. "I am dying," Arthur said. "Carry me to the lake." Bedivere lifted him and hurried through the stones and crags until they reached the shore. There, waiting in silence, was a black barge. On its deck stood figures in mourning, and among them were 3 queens, crowned in gold, their faces carved from sorrow. When they saw Arthur, their grief rose like a cry to the stars. They lifted him onto the barge. The tallest queen cradled his head and removed his broken helmet, calling his name as she wept. Bedivere fell to his knees. "My lord, you're leaving me. Where do I go? The round table is gone. What is left for me?" Arthur's voice was weak now, but clear. "Old customs fade, new ones rise. God reshapes the world in ways we don't understand. The round table did its work. Something else will come, something that will carry truth and justice forward." He paused, breathing shallow. "Pray for me, and for yourself. More is done by prayer than this world imagines." Then his eyes met Bedivere's one last time. "Farewell. You will not see me again. My work is finished. Yours is nearly finished too. Farewell." The barge drifted away into the shadowed lake, the mourning voices fading with it. Bedivere stood alone on the shore until the darkness swallowed the last trace of the boat. Later, he returned to Lyonesse, and then to Camelot. A new king ruled. New customs rose, some were good. But Bedivere was too old to belong to that new world. He lived out his days in the past, haunted by moonlit shields, by the sound of vows in the hall, and by the memory of Arthur and the Round Table, when justice still felt like something you could ride out and defend with a sword.